If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 41, Desert Revelations. Fury's unmarked government sedan kicked up a cloud of dust as it sped along the desert highway toward the secret military facility. In the passenger seat, Ver sat in contemplative silence, while Arthur lounged in the back, watching the barren landscape roll by. "So," Fury broke the silence, "you going to tell me what you know about these Skrulls? Beyond the whole shape-shifting bit." "They're infiltrators," Ver replied, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Terrorists. They invade planets, take people's identities, and prepare the world for full-scale invasion." "And the Kree?" Fury prompted. "That's what you called yourself, Kree Star Force? What's their angle in all this?" "The Kree are a warrior race," Ver explained. "Noble, fighting to protect the galaxy from threats like the Skrulls." From the back seat, Arthur made a small noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. When both Ver and Fury glanced back at him, he arranged his features into a mask of polite interest. "Something funny about that?" Fury asked, his one visible eyebrow raised. "Not at all," Arthur replied smoothly. "Just clearing my throat. Dry desert air and all that. Bit parched, really." Ver narrowed her eyes, studying him with suspicion. "You seem to have opinions about things you shouldn't know anything about." "I'm a quick study," Arthur shrugged. "And interstellar politics, even based on limited data, is usually more shades of grey than black and white, wouldn't you say? Noble warrior race fighting evil infiltrators, sounds a bit like propaganda recruitment material, if you ask me." He knew from his fragmented past life knowledge that the Kree-Skrull conflict was far more complex. The Kree were an expansionist, militaristic empire ruled by a controlling AI, the Supreme Intelligence. The Skrulls were refugees, their homeworld destroyed, desperately searching for a new home, resorting to infiltration out of necessity. Neither side was purely good or evil, though the Kree's actions often leaned towards galactic imperialism. Ver, clearly, had only been fed the Kree party line. Arthur was also wary of the Skrulls due to their shape-shifting ability. It was too powerful, creating a perfect copy and even gaining recent memories, an ideal template for doing bad things. "You question the integrity of the Kree Empire?" Ver demanded, bristling. "I question everything, dear," Arthur replied lightly. "Keeps the mind sharp." Fury cut in before Ver could retort. "All right, let's get back to you, Mr. Tour Guide. Did not get your name earlier." "Name's Merlin," Arthur replied with a casual smile. "Just here to experience an exciting alien adventure, aren't I? Not something that happens every day." "I can spot a fake name from miles away," Fury said dryly. "So what are you hiding?" "What? Merlin is a fake name." Ver turned in her seat to glare at Arthur. "How dare you lie to me?" "Nothing against you, Ver," Arthur said, raising his hands defensively, "but I can't go about giving my real name in incidents involving secret agencies and aliens, can I? Want to live a normal life after you go back to space and your work is done, you know." "Why? What's so special about meeting me that you need to hide?" Ver pressed. "Ver, this is Earth, where I don't think anyone before today knew about aliens," Arthur explained patiently. "I can tell you that once your Star Force pals collect you and zip off back to space, Agent Fury's organization, and likely several others I haven't even heard of, are going to be intensely interested in anyone who witnessed today's events. Especially someone with close contact with you. Isn't that right, Mr. Agent?" "No comment," Fury replied smoothly. "But I don't think using a fake name will help you if that happens, dear tour guide." "We'll see about that, won't we?" Arthur said with a confident smirk. "Planet C-53 is really that backward?" Ver asked, looking between them. "You haven't made contact with other planets?" "Not that I know of," Fury answered. "And frankly, after meeting you and hearing about shape-shifting terrorists, I hope it stays that way. We're not ready. A species that still fights itself over lines on a map and different flavors of superstition isn't equipped to handle Kree warriors or Skrull infiltrators. We'd be conquered or enslaved before tea time." "What?" Ver looked genuinely surprised. "You have no planetary defense force? No enhanced individuals?" She glanced unintentionally towards Arthur. Fury, focused on driving, missed the subtle exchange. "We had one," Fury said, his voice tinged with something like regret. "Decades ago. World War II. Super soldier program created a hero we called Captain America. Could probably have given you a run for your money. But he was lost at the end of the war. Presumed dead. Since then, there haven't been any super strong people, at least not that I know of. What about people with other powers, like mages? Ver asked casually. I heard whispers that mages existed on C-53. She phrased it carefully, glancing sideways to see if Arthur reacted, subtly trying to help him maintain his cover while satisfying her own curiosity. Arthur mentally applauded her quick thinking, remaining outwardly passive. Fury sighed. Ah. Them. Right. You guys know about the wizards. He sounded resigned rather than surprised. Yeah, they exist. Keep themselves to themselves mostly. Got their own hidden communities, own government, whole secret world parallel to ours. We call them wizards and witches here. They don't interact much with the non-magical world unless they have to. Content in their own little bubble, mostly. Really? Arthur feigned surprise. First time I've heard about them. First aliens, now wizards. This world isn't as simple as it seems, is it? No, Fury agreed. It isn't. But hold on, Arthur pressed, adopting a tone of naive curiosity. Wizards? With actual magic? Why haven't I heard about this before? Surely governments wouldn't just let people with potentially reality-bending powers wander about unchecked? Seems like a massive security threat, doesn't it? Fury shot him a sharp look. Careful how you talk about world leaders, young man. Just asking, Arthur said innocently. Stands to reason, though. If people like that exist, wouldn't governments try to control them? Study them? Maybe even try to replicate their abilities? Seems the logical, if morally dubious, thing to do. Ver looked disturbed. Governments do that? Experiment on people with powers. Wouldn't put it past M, Arthur said darkly. Wouldn't surprise me if the Skrull who got killed by our Agent Fury here was already on some experiment table with scientists analyzing ways to either gain their shape-shifting ability or superior strength. Am I right, Agent Fury? You've got a lot of conspiracy theories, Mr. Tour Guide, Fury replied evenly. We're not villains like that. As if I don't know how many labs are working on recreating Captain America, and how many of them are funded by the militaries of different countries, Arthur scoffed. I don't think you'd treat wizards any differently, would you? I'm becoming increasingly curious about who you really are, Tour Guide, Fury said, his voice dangerously smooth. You seem to know things most civilians shouldn't. So he's right. Ver asked Fury directly, cutting through the deflection. Your agency's experiment on beings with special powers. Fury hesitated, choosing his words carefully. There have been incidents. Research programs. But active experimentation on wizards? No. Not anymore. Oh. Arthur leaned forward slightly. Not anymore? Sounds like there's a story there. Fury sighed again, deciding perhaps a little historical context wouldn't breach national security too much, especially with an actual alien sitting next to him. It could also deter the aliens from invading the planet. All right, look. About 50, 60 years back, the magical world became known. To the mundane governments, I mean. Long story involving a dark wizard named Grindelwald trying to start a world war, got stopped by their own people, but not before the damage was done. Fury paused, checking to make sure they were both listening before continuing. However, the revelation and the fact that during the war he caused a lot of destruction and nearly leveled an important city in my country caused fear in the hearts of world leaders. Military labs, intelligence agencies, everyone started trying to find wizards, capture them, and figure out how their magic worked. How to weaponize it, how to defend against it. Standard Cold War paranoia, just with magic instead of nukes. And what happened? Arthur asked, genuinely interested now. This was history absent from any of the books he had read. Went sideways, spectacularly, Fury said grimly. A Soviet facility in Siberia pushed too hard, did something forbidden, accidentally created these things. Uncontrolled magical entities the wizards called obscurials. Basically, raw, destructive magic given form. Killed everyone in the facility, started rampaging. Soviets couldn't stop them. Had to go crawling to the wizards for help. And the wizards helped? Ver asked. Eventually. But they were furious, Fury explained. especially when they found out every major power was running similar research programs, capturing their people. It nearly triggered a full-blown war, wizards versus the mundane world. Why didn't it happen? Arthur inquired. Mutually assured destruction, basically, Fury stated. Both sides knew that war would end life on the planet as they knew it. While the wizards had magic, our side had nuclear bombs. Nothing could stand against that. So, after a lot of shouting and threats, cooler heads prevailed. Treaties were signed. A global covenant. Strict rules forbidding mundane interference in magical affairs, total ban on experimenting on magical beings or trying to replicate their powers. Magically binding, apparently, with nasty consequences for breaking them. Things have been tense but stable ever since. Separate worlds, minimal contact. Arthur digested this silently. A magically binding global covenant? That was significant. He'd need to learn more about its specific terms and enforcement mechanisms. Accidentally violating a world-ending magical treaty wasn't on his agenda. Fascinating, Ver murmured. Your species handled a potential extinction-level conflict with surprising maturity. Many civilizations don't survive their first contact with fundamentally different power structures. Well, I think it worked because these wizards were united and had governing bodies who could bring together armies and show themselves as threats who couldn't be taken lightly, Arthur observed. If they'd been isolated individuals, things might have gone differently. Arthur was thinking about the fate of mutants in many Marvel universes. None of those outcomes had been good. You don't have a good impression of the government, do you, Mr. Tour Guide? Fury asked, his tone neutral. No, and I don't think many people do, Arthur replied honestly. Always finding ways to fight wars for the smallest of interests, not caring about how it would affect the lives of civilians, aren't they? Bit dodgy, the lot of them. Fury didn't answer that. He had different beliefs that while some wars were bad, others were necessary for the stability of the world. But there was no need to argue with a stranger. Since both had firm beliefs, neither would change their mind. The rest of the journey passed in thoughtful silence. As the flat horizon gave way to distant structures, Arthur straightened in his seat. They were approaching the facility and with it, hopefully, answers about Ver's past. Chapter 42, Project Pegasus. The Project Pegasus facility was surrounded by perimeter fencing and military checkpoints. As they approached the main gate, Fury produced his identification badge. Nicholas Joseph Fury, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D, he stated confidently to the guard. Arthur raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. He'd thought the abbreviated name was adopted much later and they called themselves only by their full organizational name in the early days. Perhaps it was only Coulson who insisted on using the full title in the future. Fury was asked to place his thumb on a scanner, and after a moment, his identity was verified. Nicholas Joseph Fury, Ver noted with interest. You have 3 names. Everybody calls me Fury, he replied flatly. Not Nicholas. Not Joseph. Not Nick. Just Fury. What does your mom call you? Ver pressed, a hint of amusement in her voice. Fury. What do you call her? Fury. What about your kids? If I have them, they'll call me Fury. Arthur watched this interaction with amusement. It looked like Ver's Kree training was failing if she could joke like that. Perhaps Carol Danvers was starting to break through. You are cleared for access, came a voice through the intercom. Thank you, Fury replied, driving forward as the gate opened. So, what do Skrulls want with Dr. Lawson? Fury asked as they moved deeper into the complex. They believe that she developed the lightspeed engine at Pegasus, Ver explained. Lightspeed engine? Gotta admit, that's not the craziest thing I've heard today. Well, it is still early, Ver replied with a small smile. And you, what do you want? Fury pressed, glancing at her. To stop the Skrulls before they become unstoppable. And? Fury sighed. I know a rogue soldier when I see one. You got a personal stake in this. Ver remained silent, but Arthur, feeling left out in the back seat, decided to answer the question. She wants answers, doesn't she? He interjected. You see, our alien visitor here has these dreams, and this Dr. Lawson has been a part of them. She's rather keen to find out why, poor thing. Oh. We'll find out, Fury assured them. Soon after navigating through mountains and tunnels, they reached the main Project Pegasus facility. Arthur looked around carefully but couldn't detect any magical protections, which he had expected from a secret US military installation. The absence of such measures suggested that whatever covenant had been signed by the wizards and mundane governments was indeed serious business. He decided to avoid using any magic during this trip to ensure he didn't unintentionally break those rules. At the parking lot, Fury handed Ver a spare shield baseball cap. "Put this on. Try to look like you belong." He then tossed a pair of sunglasses back to Arthur. "You too, tour guide. Blend in." Arthur doubted a hat and sunglasses screamed covered agent, but he put them on anyway. Inside the building, they were met by a stern-looking security chief. "How can I help you?" "We're agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury explained, showing his ID. "We're looking for a woman named Lawson," Ver added directly. "A Dr. Wendy Lawson," Fury clarified. "Do you know her?" Ver asked. The security chief studied them for a moment. "Follow me." He led them not to an office, but to a small, bare briefing room. "Wait here. I need to verify your clearance." He and his accompanying guards exited, the door locking firmly behind them. Once Arthur was sure they were gone, he turned to the others. "So what's the plan now, then?" "What do you mean?" Ver asked. "You know this isn't a proper welcome, right?" Arthur pointed out. "Something you lot said was suspicious, so they're holding us until they know for sure what's what. Am I right, Agent Fury?" "Yeah. Lawson's file must be flagged way higher than I thought." Fury confirmed, taking out a pager. "Let me ask for help." He quickly typed a message and sent it. "Is that a communicator?" Ver asked, looking unimpressed. "Your planet is way behind, it seems." "Our planet, you mean," Arthur corrected with a knowing look. "What?" Ver turned to him, confused. "You'll know soon enough," Arthur replied. "Let's get out of here first, shall we?" Fury performed some spy trick, extracting a fingerprint from his ID card. After using it on the security scanner, they were free. Meanwhile, Ver had found the location of the records room on a facility map. The three made their way toward the room, 5 floors below ground, taking care to avoid guards along the way. As they reached the records floor corridor, a sleek, orange tabby cat suddenly trotted out from an open office, winding itself around Fury's legs, purring loudly. Fury's stern demeanor melted instantly. "Well, hello there, handsome," he cooed, crouching down to scratch the cat behind the ears. "Aren't you just the prettiest kitty?" Arthur watched Fury's transformation into a doting cat person with amusement, then leaned closer to Ver. "That's not just a cat, is it?" he whispered. "Feels dangerous." "No," Ver confirmed. "That's a flurkin." "A whatkin?" Arthur asked, feigning ignorance though he already knew the answer. "Long story," Ver muttered. "Just know they're more than they seem. And dangerous, yes. Right. Should we warn Agent Cat Whisperer?" "Nah," Ver decided, seeing Fury happily letting the flurkin rub against his face. "He seems happy. Let him have his moment." She nodded towards a heavy vault-like door at the end of the corridor. "Records room." Ignoring Fury and his new feline friend, Goose, according to the name tag on its collar, Ver strode to the reinforced door. A quick photon blast melted the lock mechanism, and she pushed it open. "Subtle," Arthur commented dryly as he and a reluctant Fury, after promising Goose he'd be back, followed her inside. With Fury's help navigating the filing system, they soon found the relevant documents. It became clear that Lawson was a Kree, evidenced by her notes written in Kree glyphs. "She's dead though," Fury informed them, reviewing a report. "She crashed an aircraft during an unauthorized test flight. Took a pilot down with her. That's why security here is so unfriendly. They're covering up a $1 billion mistake. Oh, and your lightspeed engine is toast." "When did this crash happen?" Ver asked, her voice tense. 6 years ago. 1989. "Who was the pilot?" "It's redacted." Arthur, who had been waiting for this moment, extracted a photograph from one of the files and showed it to them. "It's redacted in the text, but here's a photo of the pilot. Recognize anyone?" Ver stared at the photo, her breath catching. Memories, fragmented but vivid, slammed into her. Laughter. Friendship. Flying. Lawson. Maria. What does this mean?" Fury asked, looking from the photo to Vere's shocked face, then to Arthur. Means our alien visitor here isn't quite as alien as she thought, Arthur explained quietly. She has amnesia, and remembers only the last 6 years. Since the crash. Seems pretty clear what happened, doesn't it? Something happened during the crash, and she was abducted by aliens who trained her to be a space soldier. Bloody fascinating, really. Like the plot of a science fiction novel. Earthling abducted by aliens. This day is really driving me crazy, Fury muttered. I need to go out for a walk, clear my head. When you go out to report to your boss, Arthur called after him, mind checking if that really is your boss? What? Fury turned, frowning. No need to explain to me, Arthur shrugged. You soldiers always have a chain of command, don't you? Just make sure he's not a Skrull in disguise coming here to kill us, yet? Otherwise, we can handle any investigation. Fury didn't reply and stormed out, clearly annoyed by Arthur's insinuation. After Fury left, Vere seemed to regain control of her emotions and emerged from her thoughts. So, she whispered. What do you think really happened? Finally begging me for answers, are you? Arthur replied with a smirk. Been waiting for this moment, I have. Seeing the dangerous glare in Vere's eyes, Arthur quickly backpedaled. All right, I'll stop taking the mickey. I've figured out most of it. You were a pilot working on this lightspeed engine project with Dr. Lawson. You were successful, but for some reason, you and Lawson had to make a run for it. The plane crashed, Lawson died. You survived and maybe gained some powers, but the Kree finding this, abducted you. Did some experiments and turned you into their space soldier. But why? Vere asked, her voice barely audible. I don't know for certain, Arthur admitted, but we can confirm my theory by looking for this Maria Rambeau person. Looks like you two were rather close. Okay, Vere nodded. But let me contact my commander first. Still willing to believe them? Arthur asked skeptically. Vere ignored him and used a nearby phone, modified it with her alien tech, and placed a call to Jan Rog. Arthur couldn't hear the conversation, but he trusted that Vere wouldn't make any foolish decisions. Instead, he stood near the lift, waiting for Fury to return. Arthur did not want to fight the Skrulls, especially when he was not sure if he could magic in this military facility or not. Several minutes later, an anxious-looking Fury emerged from the elevator. Where's Vere? He demanded urgently. We have to leave. Now. Follow me, Arthur replied, leading the way. So I was right then? Your boss was a Skrull in disguise. Interested in working for S.H.I.E.L.D? Fury asked, giving him an appraising look. Arthur laughed. Not bloody likely. They soon reached Vere, who had finished her call and looked troubled. So, your commander good guy or the bad guy? Arthur asked casually. Don't know, she replied, her expression hardening. But he's lying. We'll figure that out later, Arthur said. Fury here called in backup that apparently includes Skrulls. What? Vere turned to Fury, alarmed. Not the time, Fury insisted. Let's escape first. I don't want to fight aliens. They rushed to the stairs and made their way to the hangar. On the correct floor, they encountered a young Agent Coulson with a gun pointed at them. Fury made a subtle hand signal, and to their surprise, Coulson stepped aside, opening the door for them. As they passed, Arthur gave him a cheerful wave and muttered, "Cheers, mate," before following Fury and Vere through the door. Vere ran directly to an experimental aircraft parked in the hangar, and Fury and Arthur followed close behind. They could hear footsteps and shouting closing in behind them. Inside the aircraft, Arthur strapped himself into one of the passenger seats while Vere quickly familiarized herself with the controls. Moments later, amid a hail of gunfire pinging off the hull, they soared out of the Project Pegasus facility and into the open sky. Brilliant, Arthur murmured, watching the facility shrink beneath them. Nothing like a proper getaway to make you feel alive, is there? Chapter 43, Maria Rambeau. The experimental aircraft cut through the sky, its engines humming with barely restrained power. Vere handled the controls with practiced ease, as though she'd been flying this particular model for years. Perhaps, Arthur mused, muscle memory was something even Kree mind tampering couldn't fully erase. A soft meow interrupted the silence. Goose, the ginger tabby flurkin, emerged cautiously from under a console where it had presumably napped during the escape from Pegasus. We've got a stowaway, Fury announced, spotting the orange cat emerging from beneath a storage compartment. Hang on, Goose, Ver called back as the aircraft hit a patch of turbulence. The cat meowed again, padding carefully toward Fury. Who's a good kitty, then? Fury cooed, momentarily forgetting the interstellar crisis as he scratched the flurkin behind the ears. Yes, you are. Good Goose. Arthur watched this display with undisguised amusement. The fearsome future agent Fury, reduced to baby talk by a cat that could devour him in seconds. He briefly considered trying to make the flurkin his pet, but after contemplating it further, Arthur decided there was no point. What would he need a flurkin for anyway? Unlimited storage space? Breaking the quiet moment, Fury turned to Arthur, his professional demeanor returning. I should thank you, he said reluctantly. Keller had been replaced by one of those Skrulls. No worries, mate, Arthur replied with a casual shrug. Glad you listened. Avoided a rather messy firefight. Wouldn't have wanted Ver here, he nodded towards the pilot, accidentally vaporizing half your shield colleagues. Rather fortunate, that. Yeah, well, Fury grumbled, still don't like owing favors. He glanced nervously out the window again. Those agents back at the base, the ones who aren't these aliens called Skrulls, they gonna be okay? Ver hesitated. I'm not sure. From what I've been told about Skrulls, they'll killed all witnesses to keep their secret. But I don't know what to believe anymore. Are the Kree really the good guys? No need to worry yourself, Arthur interjected confidently. They'll be right as rain. Why are you so sure? Fury asked, eyeing him suspiciously. Just trust me on this one, Arthur said with a knowing smile. They wouldn't reveal themselves at the base and cause a proper ruckus. They need to stay hidden, don't they? And their real target is Ver here. If nothing unexpected happens, your colleagues will be perfectly fine. Fury seemed somewhat consoled, but still uneasy. Where to now? He asked, changing the subject. Louisiana, Ver replied, her eyes fixed on the horizon. I need some answers. Maria Rambeau. Fury guessed, recalling the name from Lawson's files. Yes, Ver confirmed. According to that file, she was Lawson's friend, and mine. Maybe she has answers. She looked towards Fury. Where exactly is Louisiana? Due east, Fury instructed. Hang a right at Memphis. The aircraft banked smoothly, changing course towards the humid air of the American South. Light years away aboard the Helion, Yon-Rogg stood before the holographic projection of Ronan the Accuser, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension in the air. Ronan, he acknowledged respectfully. The accusers completed their operation, Ronan stated, his blue face stern beneath its dark paint, but the greater mission was a failure, thanks to your team. It was a trap, Yon-Rogg explained, to lure our operative Ver to Torfa and kidnap her. Give us their location, Ronan demanded. We'll take care of the terrorist threat. By bombing them out of the galaxy. Yon-Rogg retorted, barely concealing his disdain. No, we'll handle this. A cell of Skrulls anywhere is a threat to Kree everywhere, Ronan insisted. Where are they? They are, Yon-Rogg began. On C-53 with Ver, who has gone rogue, Minerva interrupted, stepping into view beside Yon-Rogg. Her cold eyes met his briefly before turning back to Ronan. With the Skrull leader, Talos. She's abandoned her mission and is now collaborating with the locals and possibly the Skrulls. Our commander has been reluctant to report this development. Yon-Rogg's jaw tightened, but he didn't contradict her. Is this true? Ronan demanded. She is, temporarily lost, Yon-Rogg managed, his voice tight. Confused by Skrull manipulation. But recoverable. I will bring her back into alignment. Do so, or we will destroy the planet with her, Ronan threatened before cutting the transmission. As the hologram flickered out, Yon-Rogg turned on Minerva. What did you think you were doing? He demanded. I fulfilled my duty to the Empire and the Supreme Intelligence, she replied coldly. Your personal attachment to the weapon has blinded you, Commander. She is compromised. You don't comprehend her potential. Yon-Rogg shot back. That power, properly guided, could secure Kree dominance for centuries. We need her. But she comes with risk, Minerva countered. Once she restores her memory, which there's a high chance she has by being back home, she would become one of our enemies. Do you want that power unleashed on the Kree Empire? The Supreme Intelligence agrees with my decision. Maintain course for C-53, Yunrog ordered the navigator. Despite everything, he clung to the hope that he could reach Carol first, reason with her, reinforce the conditioning before Ronan's brutal solution became the only option. Back on Earth, Arthur had no idea that his interference had caused some shift in the events. The Kree were moving faster than in the original timeline, with Ronan possibly appearing earlier than expected to escalate the situation beyond what he was prepared for. The unaware Arthur's focus was on the approaching Louisiana landscape visible through the cockpit window, lush greenery replacing the desert sands. They landed in a large field near a modest farmhouse with an aircraft hangar nearby. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass as they disembarked. A woman in overalls was working on an aircraft engine in the open hangar, while a young girl around 11 years old played nearby. At the sound of their approach, both looked up. "Excuse me," Ver called out as they approached, "I'm looking for Maria Rambeau." The young girl stared at Ver, her eyes widening in shock and recognition. "Auntie Carol," she whispered, her voice trembling. Then she broke into a full sprint, launching herself at Carol. "Mom! Mom, it's Auntie Carol! She's back!" The girl hugged Carol fiercely. "I knew it!" she exclaimed, tears welling up. "Everyone said you were dead. They lied. I knew you weren't dead." Ver stood awkwardly, unsure how to respond. "I'm not really who you think I am," she murmured, though the words lacked conviction even to her own ears. The woman Maria approached slowly, her expression a complex mixture of shock, disbelief, and cautious hope. After stilted introductions, Maria invited them inside. Fury was eager to learn more about Carol Danvers' past, while Ver seemed both eager and apprehensive to discover her true identity. Arthur, who had been quiet through much of the exchange, hung back as the group moved toward the house. "You coming?" Ver asked, noticing his hesitation. "I think I'll stay out here for a bit," Arthur replied, gesturing vaguely around the property. "It's been a rather exhausting day, hasn't it? I fancy a bit of fresh air to clear my head. You lot go on and chat. I'll just take a kip under that lovely shade tree over there." "Not curious about our alien friend's story?" Fury asked suspiciously. "Not so alien anymore, is she?" Arthur replied with a knowing smile. "And I've already sussed out most of it, haven't I? Besides, I reckon they'll need the space to process everything. Bit personal, all this." Fury nodded, but his curiosity won out and he still followed the others inside. Ver hesitated, looking back at Arthur. "Don't wander off too far. Or get into trouble." "Wouldn't dream of it," Arthur assured her with a small smile. "Go on, then. Find out who you really are, Carol Danvers." As the others disappeared into the house, Arthur circled the property slowly. While he genuinely needed some rest, that wasn't the real reason he'd stayed back. He remained outside because he didn't fancy witnessing the emotional and touching moments he knew were about to unfold inside. He'd never been good with that sort of thing. Genuine human connection had always made him feel awkward and out of place. So while the others sorted through Carol's past, he wandered around the property, keeping an eye out for the visiting Skrulls he knew would arrive soon to set the next series of events in motion. Chapter 44, Blackbox Revelations. Arthur had been wandering around the Rambeau property for almost an hour when suddenly one of the alert charms he had placed at the property long ago as a backup for monitoring Ver's arrival on the planet triggered. Arthur knew what this meant. Talos, the Skrull leader, was here. Right on schedule, Arthur murmured to himself as he walked towards young Monica Rambeau, who was playing alone at the edge of the property. Knowing what was about to unfold, he felt it wise to stay near her to ensure he could handle anything unexpected. As Arthur approached, Monica looked up with curiosity. "You're the British guy who came with Auntie Carol, right?" "The very same," Arthur confirmed with a friendly smile. "Name's Merlin. So what do you think of everything that's happened today? Bit more exciting than any storybook you've read, I'd wager." "It's crazy." Monica agreed, her voice full of excitement. "I knew Auntie Carol wasn't really gone. But aliens? And spaceships? Wow! Indeed," Arthur chuckled. "So, reckon you'll follow in your mum's footsteps? Become a pilot?" "Totally," Monica declared. "I wanna fly that jet you guys landed in." "Do you know how?" "Afraid not," Arthur admitted with genuine regret. "Bit beyond my skill set, that is. Reckon your mum could handle it, though." He nodded toward a figure approaching them. "Maria Rambeau, Or rather, someone who looked exactly like her. The resemblance was uncanny, better than anything a polyjuice potion could achieve, but Arthur's magical senses detected something off. It was just a feeling, but he was grateful to have some way of recognizing when a Skrull was near. "Mom, why did you come out here alone?" Monica asked. "Where's Auntie Carol?" "She and the agent are planning their next steps," the Skrull Maria responded smoothly. "Not wanting to disturb them, I thought I'd check on you." "What are you two doing?" "Nothing much," Arthur interjected, pulling a stack of cards from his pocket. "Fancy seeing a card trick?" "I'm rather good, if I do say so myself." Inside the house, Carol, Fury, and the real Maria were going through old photo albums when a knock interrupted them. "Don't answer that," Fury warned immediately. "It's just my neighbor," Maria replied, though uncertainty colored her voice. "They can change into anyone," Carol reminded her. After a moment's hesitation, Maria went to the door anyway. A middle-aged man with a friendly smile stood on the porch. "Hi there," he greeted cheerfully. "What do you want?" Carol asked, suspicion evident in her tone as she moved protectively closer to Maria. The man hesitated, clearly searching for words. "Hey, Tom," Maria said, attempting to sound normal. "This is my friend, Carol." "Oh. Pleased to meet you," he replied, offering his hand. When Carol shook it, there was a visible spark of static electricity. "Yozers," the man chuckled, shaking his hand. "Static electricity out here's no joke." He glanced beyond them toward the yard. "I noticed that peculiar bird you got parked by the road and I was just wondering if you mind if I bring the boys over to get a closer look-see." "A closer look-see?" Carol repeated skeptically. "Yeah. To see the bird parked out by the road." Carol continued, her suspicion growing with each word. The man nodded. "You're really working overtime to sell this one, aren't you, Talos?" Carol said, her posture shifting to combat ready. "I'm sorry, Tom," Maria intervened, trying to defuse the situation. "This really isn't a good time. I'll come by tomorrow, okay?" He began, but Maria was already closing the door. As the door closed, a voice came from inside the house, "You know, you really should be kinder to your neighbors. You never know when you're gonna need to borrow some sugar." Fury drew his gun and Carol's fists began to glow with energy when Talos raised his hands defensively. "Now, hang on a second," Talos said. "Before you go swinging those jazz hands around, making a mess of your friend's house." Talos pointed outside through the window. "Oh my god!" Maria gasped. Outside, they saw another Maria together with Monica, both watching Arthur as he performed what appeared to be an elaborate card trick. Arthur glanced up at the window and gave a cheerful wave to Carol. "No one's gonna hurt the girl," Talos assured them, raising his hands higher. "Just don't kill me. That would really complicate the situation." "I'm about 5 seconds from complicating that wall with some ugly-ass Skrull brains," Fury threatened, his gun trained steadily on the alien. "I'm sorry I simmed your boss," Talos replied with surprising sincerity. "But now I stand before you as my true self. Without deception." "And who is that out there?" Carol demanded, though she didn't seem particularly nervous knowing Arthur was outside. "Okay, that's a fair point," Talos admitted, "but I'm sure you understand I had to take some precautions. I saw you crush 20 of my best men with your hands bound. I just wanna talk." "Last time we talked, I ended up hanging from my ankles," Carol countered. "That was before I knew who you were," Talos explained. "Before I knew what made you different from the others." "Is Monica safe out there?" Maria asked anxiously, staring at the window. "She's fine," Carol replied with unexpected confidence. "Merlin's with her." "What's our tour guide gonna do against a Skrull?" Fury asked incredulously. "He can handle the Skrull easily," Carol stated, not taking her eyes off Talos. Fury and Talos exchanged confused glances. "You seem awfully confident in your friend's abilities," Talos observed cautiously. "I have my reasons," Carol replied cryptically, remembering her earlier fight with Arthur. "Now, what do you want?" Talos reached slowly into his jacket. "I have an audio recording from Pegasus, from your plane crash 6 years ago, on a device I believe you call a Blackbox. They told me it was destroyed in the crash," Maria interjected. "How'd you get it?" "Young lady, I have a special skill that allows me to get into places I'm not supposed to be," Talos explained. Call me young lady again, I'm gonna put my foot in a place it's not supposed to be, Maria warned. Am I supposed to guess where that is? Talos asked, genuinely perplexed. Your ass, Carol and Maria clarified in unison. Okay, I get it. We're all on edge, Talos conceded. But if you'll listen to this recording, I assure you it'll be worth your while. Call your buddy back inside and I'll listen, Carol demanded. Deal, Talos agreed. At that moment, Goose the cat wandered into the room, purring softly. Talos recoiled in horror. Oh, my god! Get that thing away! He cried, pressing himself against the wall. How'd that get in here? Fury asked, looking down at the cat in confusion. The cat? Carol asked, bemused by the alien's reaction. That's not a cat. Talos insisted, pointing a trembling finger. That's a flurkin. Extremely dangerous. Fury chuckled, scooping Goose up. Dangerous? He wouldn't hurt a fly. Before the conversation could continue, the door opened. Arthur stepped inside with Monica, and behind them, the Skrull disguised as Maria. As Monica looked back and forth between the two identical women, confusion washed over her face. Mom! She whispered, backing toward Arthur instinctively. The Skrull beside them sighed and reverted to his natural green form, causing Monica's eyes to widen in astonishment rather than fear. Hey, tour guide! Fury called out. You don't seem surprised by any of this. I have my ways of knowing. Arthur replied with a casual shrug. So what's the plan? Subdue these chaps and torture information out of them? I've seen plenty of films and read books about this sort of thing, but never witnessed it firsthand. Rather curious, that. Nothing like that, Carol replied firmly. We might be on the same side. What are you? Talos asked Arthur directly, his eyes narrowing. Just a bloke passing through, Arthur replied with an enigmatic smile. Bit of a tourist, really. Now, about that Blackbox recording you mentioned. Talos stared at him for another moment, then seemed to decide that pursuing the matter wouldn't be productive. Everyone followed Maria to her office, where she had an old desktop computer ready to play the Blackbox recording. Everyone should hear this, Talos said solemnly. Especially you, Carol Danvers. As the device began to load, tension filled the room. Time seemed to stretch as they waited. What's happening? Carol whispered, her eyes fixed on the screen. It's loading, Fury replied softly. Arthur laughed under his breath. Such slow loading speeds would have frustrated his past self, much less Carol who was accustomed to advanced alien tech. Finally, the computer beeped readiness. Talos reached out and clicked play. Audio filled the small room, static, alarms, shouting, the roar of stressed engines. Then voices, Lawson's, urgent and fearful, Carol's own younger voice, filled with confusion and determination, and then Jan Rog's, cold and commanding. The recording laid bare the truth. Lawson, revealed as Mar-Vell, a Kree scientist, trying to escape with her lightspeed engine tech, the Kree pursuit led by Jan Rog, the crash, Mar-Vell's last stand, Jan Rog murdering her, Carol defying him, destroying the engine core herself, absorbing its immense power in the resulting explosion, then darkness, and Jan Rog's voice talking about taking Ver back to Hala, the home planet of the Kree. Chapter 45, A Space Mission. The recording clicked off, plunging the room into heavy silence. Carol sat frozen, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks as the dam of suppressed memories finally broke. Maria instinctively reached out, taking her friend's hand. He lied to me, Carol whispered, her voice barely audible. Her eyes remained fixed on the now silent computer screen. Everything that I knew was a lie. Arthur stood quietly near the doorway, watching the scene unfold. He had positioned himself away from the others, giving them space while still remaining present. Though he'd known this moment was coming, witnessing the raw emotion on Carol's face as her entire worldview collapsed was something else entirely. Now, Talos said softly, his usual sarcastic edge gone, replaced by something resembling genuine sympathy, now you understand. What? Carol's voice cracked slightly. What do I understand now? Jan Rog killed Mar-Vell, Talos explained patiently. He killed her because she realized she was fighting on the wrong side of an unjust war. He killed her to protect the Kree Empire's secrets and to acquire her lightspeed engine. No, Carol shook her head defiantly. Your people are terrorists. They kill innocents. I saw the ruins on Torfa. Ruins that the accusers are responsible for, Talos countered. My people lived as refugees on Torfa. Homeless, ever since we resisted Kree rule and they destroyed our planet. And the handful of us that are left will be slaughtered next, unless you help me finish what Mar-Vell started. Arthur shifted slightly, drawing attention. He hadn't intended to intervene further, but Talos's innocent refugee narrative grated against his knowledge of the Skrulls' own complicated, often morally ambiguous, history from other timelines. From what he knew, Skrulls were never quite as innocent as Talos was portraying. While their situation deserved sympathy, from what Arthur understood, they had once been conquerors themselves, much like the Kree. Expanding their rule across planets by any means necessary. Talos, right? Arthur finally spoke up, unable to remain silent. Are you lot really as innocent as you keep saying? Was Torfa destroyed solely by the Kree? From my limited experience with you chaps in these few hours, I reckon you wouldn't have just hidden on that planet. I'd wager you did exactly what you've done here with S.H.I.E.L.D. Take control of whatever government using your abilities, then use that planet to fight against the Kree. Talos's flow of persuasive speech halted abruptly. Just when it looked like he was winning Carol's help, this Earthling had disrupted his momentum. Fury seized on it immediately. Yeah, I'm with the Brit on this one. Sounds plausible. You Skrulls seem pretty good at playing people. Talos sighed, running a green hand over his face. Look, maybe not all Skrulls have behaved honorably, he conceded reluctantly. War makes people do desperate things. And yes, there are factions within our scattered people who might pursue more aggressive strategies. But my group, he gestured to the other Skrull, Norax, who had remained silent, is filled with families. Scientists, civilians. We didn't fight on Torfa, we fled. All we want is a home. A place to live without looking over our shoulders. And this lightspeed engine helps you do that? Carol asked, her voice still thick with emotion but regaining focus. It allows us to travel far beyond the Kree's reach, Talos explained. To find a new, uninhabited world where we can finally be safe. And what happens if you don't find an empty planet? Arthur pressed quietly. What if you find one that's already occupied? Like, say, Planet C-53? Rather convenient location, isn't it? Nice atmosphere, plenty of resources. Tempting to just settle in. Arthur wasn't making things up, he knew a rogue group of Skrulls would attempt exactly that in the future of the MCU. Talos met Arthur's skeptical gaze. I give you my word, Commander Talos's word, he said solemnly, my people will not seek to conquer C-53. We seek only refuge. If other Skrull factions cause trouble here, I will even aid you against them. Is that sufficient guarantee? Right now, Kree are the enemy we both share. They're coming for me, for my people, he nodded towards Carol, for her, and for Mar-Vell's engine core. Help us find the lab, get the core, and we leave. We take the Kree threat with us. It's mutually beneficial. Arthur considered this. Talos seemed sincere, at least about his group's intentions. And he was right about the Kree threat. Fine, Arthur said with a dismissive wave. Don't particularly care about your internal politics anyway. Just dislike being fed a sob story that conveniently omits key details. Thanks for complicating things, Fury muttered. Now I don't know who to trust. Carol looked lost, her newfound identity still settling in. What should I do? Maria squeezed her friend's hand. Let's keep things simple. The lightspeed engine was Lawson's work, and she said Pegasus wasn't to fight wars but to end them. Finding a way out. Exactly. Talos seized on her words. Finding the core lets us escape the war for good. But I destroyed the core, Carol reminded them, doubt clouding her features. No, Talos corrected, you destroyed the engine. The core that powered it is in a remote location. If you help us decode those coordinates, we can find it. What if you find it and use it as a weapon against us? Carol challenged, the ingrained Kree suspicion resurfacing. We just want a home, Talos replied, the weariness of a long war evident in his voice. After a few minutes of tense silence, Talos spoke again, his voice softer. I know I don't deserve your trust, but you were our only lead. We discovered that your energy signature matched Mar-Vell's core. Now we know why. Arthur watched as Talos continued his appeal. If only you knew the importance of it to me, the Skrull said. I just need your help decoding the coordinates to Mar-Vell's lab. Carol wiped her eyes and straightened, a new determination forming on her face. Those weren't coordinates. They're state vectors for orbital position and velocity. You didn't find her lab on Earth because it's not on Earth. Her confidence grew with each word. That was the location on the date of the crash 6 years ago. If we track its course, we'll find it in orbit right now. It's just basic physics, Maria added with a small, proud smile. In orbit? Talos asked, looking stunned. Was that so difficult to figure out? I mean, you're my science guy, right? He turned toward the other Skrull with undisguised frustration. Yon-Rogg will catch up to me soon, Carol said, urgency clear in her voice. We've got to get to the core before he does. We're going to space? Fury asked, looking utterly incredulous. In what? My government-issue sedan. A few tweaks to your vessel should do it, offered Norax, the science-oriented Skrull. I can handle the modifications. You are the science guy, Fury muttered under his breath, shaking his head. The Skrull immediately got to work on the aircraft, transforming it for space travel. Meanwhile, Carol and Monica somehow convinced Maria to join Carol on the mission. Maria made a difficult call to her parents, arranging for them to take Monica to safety while she was gone. Before Monica left with her grandparents, Carol knelt down, pulling up the schematics of her Kree uniform on the day-top pad. Okay, Lieutenant Trouble, she said to Monica, with a genuine smile. Big mission coming up. Need a new look. Don't want to wear these enemy colors anymore. Help me pick. They experimented with various color combinations, and while Arthur lobbied hard for a neon green design, Carol and Monica laughed it off. In the end, the iconic red and blue color scheme won out. Right then, Arthur commented as Carol admired her new virtual uniform. Looks good. Though I still maintain neon green would have been bolder. He grinned. Now, about acquiring one of those suits. You wouldn't happen to know how to, shall we say, borrow one from an unconscious Kree, would you? Asking for a friend. After a bit of playful nagging and Carol rolling her eyes, she quickly explained the suit's interface and removal protocols. Useful information for the future. With everything ready and Monica safely on her way with her grandparents, they gathered beside the newly modified spacecraft. Carol turned to Arthur with a questioning look. Are you coming with us? She asked. Wouldn't miss it, Arthur replied instantly. Always fancied a bit of proper extraterrestrial tourism. Keen to see what Earth looks like from orbit. Heard the views smashing. But I thought you didn't like the Skrulls, Carol pointed out. Although I don't particularly like them, I don't hate them either, Arthur clarified. I'm just wary of them because if they wanted to, they could turn into the American president and put a hit on me, couldn't they? But since you're going on this mission, I'm expecting trouble, and you'll be needing my help to keep these two normal people alive. He nodded toward Maria and Fury. Thank you, Carol said simply. What do you mean normal people? Fury asked, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. You're not? Still hiding something, tour guide? Isn't everyone, Agent Fury? Arthur replied with an enigmatic smile. Let's just say I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Shall we? He gestured towards the open ramp of the now space-worthy aircraft. Adventure awaits. Chapter 46, Mar-Vell's Laboratory. The modified aircraft hummed with energy as it prepared for takeoff. Arthur settled into his seat behind Carol and Maria, who had taken their positions in the cockpit with the easy familiarity of long-time flying partners. He glanced at Norax sitting across from him, feeling a quiet satisfaction. You're welcome, by the way, Arthur muttered to the Skrull scientist. Norax tilted his head. For what? For saving your green hide. Talos was ready to leave you behind as a decoy. The Skrull's expression hardened with resolve. I don't care if I have to sacrifice myself for the Skrull cause. Each of us would gladly die if it means our people survive. Arthur shrugged. Sending false coordinates to Yon-Rogg is far more effective than sacrificing you for what would have been, at most, a 5-minute delay. In the seat beside Norax, Talos shifted uncomfortably but didn't argue. The plan had been his idea after all, leave his trusted scientist behind disguised as Carol to buy them time. Arthur had shut it down immediately, pointing out the cruelty and futility of such a sacrifice. Initiating launch sequence, Maria called from the cockpit, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Everyone strapped in back there. As ready as we'll ever be, Fury replied, nervously clutching Goose to his chest. The orange tabby purred contentedly, seemingly unbothered by their impending journey beyond Earth's atmosphere. Talos pressed himself against the far wall, eyeing the Flurkin with undisguised terror. You really shouldn't have that thing on your lap, you know. Alliance with you is tenuous at best, Greenskin, Fury retorted, stroking the cat with exaggerated affection. As long as Goose here keeps you nervous, he's getting all the cuddles. The engines roared to life, and Arthur felt the vibration run through his entire body. His stomach lurched as the craft lifted off the ground, accelerating upward at a rate that pushed him back into his seat. Through the viewport, he watched the Louisiana landscape shrink beneath them. Fields and forests became patchwork quilts, then abstract paintings, then finally disappeared altogether as clouds enveloped them. Passing 500 and climbing, Maria announced, her voice professional despite the unprecedented nature of their mission. How's our structural integrity? Carol asked, hands steady on the controls. Holding, Norax replied, checking the readings on a makeshift console of Earth and Skrull technology. The blue sky gradually darkened to indigo, then to inky black. Stars appeared, impossibly bright without atmospheric interference. Arthur's breath caught in his throat. Despite all he had experienced in 2 lifetimes, nothing had prepared him for this: the vast emptiness of space, the brilliant pinpricks of distant suns, the curve of Earth below them, a perfect blue marble against the void. Bloody hell, he whispered, pressing his face closer to the viewport. It's magnificent. First time in space? Maria asked, glancing back at him. Isn't it yours as well? Arthur countered. She shrugged. I've schemed the edge in a jet. Close enough to taste the quiet. So? Maria ignored him, twisting fully in her seat to face the others. The cabin hummed with unspoken tension, thick enough to carve. She fixed Talos with a look. Can I ask you something? Ask away, Talos replied warily. This shape-shifting, can you just turn into anything you want? Ah, the eternal question, Talos sighed. Well, I have to see it first. Get a good visual imprint. Can all Skrulls do it? Maria pressed. Physiologically? Yes, Talos confirmed. But, doing it well? That takes practice. Skill. And, dare I say it, he added with a touch of professional pride, a certain degree of natural talent. Can you turn into a cat? Fury asked, an impish gleam in his eye. What's a cat? Talos responded with genuine confusion. What about a filing cabinet? Fury continued, warming to his impromptu interrogation. Talos looked baffled. Why would I turn into a filing cabinet? A Venus flytrap. I'll give you $50 right now if you turn into a Venus flytrap, Fury offered. Talos sighed deeply, looking to Arthur for support, but the wizard merely grinned. For another 50 quid, I'd like to see you transform into the Queen of England, Arthur added cheerfully. Complete with crown and all the royal trimmings. Talos sighed dramatically. Your species has a bizarre sense of humor. Switching engines from scramjet to fusion, Carol announced from the front, cutting off the banter. Buckle up, folks. Might get a bit bumpy. The craft lurched forward with sudden acceleration, pressing them all deeper into their seats. Arthur felt his stomach flip as they broke free of Earth's gravitational pull entirely. Hey, Fury stammered, his composed facade cracking slightly. Is this normal, like, space turbulence? Pretty much, Carol replied without turning around. After several minutes of exhilarating, slightly nauseating acceleration, the engines throttled back, shutting down with a final hum. Outside the viewport, endless stars sparkled against the darkness. It was breathtaking and utterly terrifying in its vastness. Goose meowed softly, seemingly untroubled by their cosmic surroundings. Locking in on coordinate grid, Carol announced, scanning the emptiness ahead. Where is it? It's gotta be here. Well, is it in front of all that nothing, or behind it? Fury asked sarcastically. Carol manipulated something on her wrist device. A crystalline trill echoed through the compartment, and before their eyes, the emptiness shimmered and transformed. A massive structure materialized, an orbiting laboratory complex hanging silently against the starfield. Cloaking technology, Arthur murmured appreciatively. Very impressive. Preparing for docking sequence, Carol announced, her hands moving with practiced confidence across the controls. Everyone hold tight. This could get bumpy. Miles below on Earth, Jan Rog stood in the middle of a barren desert, fury radiating from every pore. The coordinates Ver had transmitted had led him to nothing, absolutely nothing. No sign of her, no trace of the Skrulls, just empty landscape stretching to the horizon. Arthur's strategy had worked perfectly. Instead of arriving at the Rambeau home or some other place to find a lone Skrull attempting to impersonate Carol, a deception that would have lasted minutes at best before ending in execution, Yon-Rogg had been sent on a genuine wild goose chase. He keyed his secure channel, the holographic visage of Ronan the Accuser formed in the air before him, stern and unyielding. "Commander Yon-Rogg," Ronan's voice boomed. "What is the status?" Yon-Rogg straightened, struggling to maintain his composure. "Subject Ver has gone rogue, aided by Skrull insurgents and C-53 natives." Ronan's lip curled. "Intervention is en route. I will reach the planet within one rotation. For the good of the Empire, the infestation will be purged." The link severed. Yon-Rogg exhaled through his nose, slow, controlled. Pride wounded, mission compromised, but not yet lost. He would find Ver, retrieve the core, and if necessary drag her before the Supreme Intelligence in chains. Back at Mar-Vell's lab. After docking their modified craft, the group cautiously explored the interior of the cloaked space station. They moved through corridors that blended Kree functionality with surprisingly Earth touches, posters, personal items, hinting at Mar-Vell's life undercover. They eventually reached what appeared to be the main research chamber, and there it was, the object of their quest, glowing with an ethereal blue light. The Tesseract suspended in an energy containment field at the center of the room. While the others were distracted by the surroundings, Arthur found himself drawn to the cube. He knew what it really was: the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones, objects of immense cosmic power. Without waiting for the others, he approached it, reaching out almost involuntarily. "Careful there," Carol called, but too late. Arthur's fingers closed around the Tesseract, lifting it from its housing. The moment he touched it, raw power surged through him unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His magic resonated with it, amplifying exponentially. The fabric of space bent around him, responding to his will. Apparition, which had always been limited by distance and risk, now seemed childishly simple. He could teleport anywhere in the universe with barely a thought. But the power was too much and the connection quickly spiraled out of control. The Tesseract wasn't just enhancing his magic, it was hijacking it. Arthur felt his magic reaching out, warping the space around him without his direction. He tried to release the cube, but his fingers wouldn't respond. Panic gripped him as he realized he was about to be teleported somewhere, anywhere in the vast universe. Just as blue energy began to envelop him, Carol lunged forward and wrenched the Tesseract from his grasp. The connection broke instantly, and Arthur staggered backward, gasping. "What happened?" Carol demanded, holding the cube carefully. "That thing," Arthur managed between ragged breaths, "was about to activate and send me on an unplanned space adventure. Not exactly what I had in mind for today's excursion." Even as he spoke, his mind raced with the implications. That power, it was unlike anything he'd ever felt. Raw, pure, cosmic energy that could reshape reality itself. If he could harness it, learn to control it instead of being controlled by it. "Good thing I took this from you then," Carol said, studying the cube with newfound wariness. "Yes, rather fortunate timing," Arthur agreed, flexing his fingers to ensure they were working properly. "That was intense." His casual tone belied the calculations running through his mind. Could he take it? Should he? The stone was supposed to be swallowed by Goose, eventually making its way to S.H.I.E.L.D., but if he intercepted it? Understood. "Stay away from the glowing cube," Fury stated firmly, giving Arthur a look that clearly questioned his judgment. As they continued exploring, Maria wandered to a nearby desk. "What was Lawson doing with all this kid stuff?" she asked, picking up what appeared to be a child's drawing. "Of course," Arthur said suddenly. "We're not alone." He pointed to a steaming cup of coffee sitting on a nearby desk. "That's fresh. Which means Talos didn't just come here for the Tesseract," Fury deduced grimly. "He came for his family," Carol finished. As if on cue, they heard Talos's voice from another section of the lab, calling out in his native language. Carol made a quick decision, grabbing a nearby lunchbox decorated with cartoon characters and placing the Tesseract inside. "I should take that," Arthur said immediately, eyeing the lunchbox. "I can hide it properly, ensure no one gets their hands on it." Carol hesitated. "You sure? After what just happened?" "Perfectly sure," he insisted. "I know not to touch it directly now." I've had experience hiding dangerous artifacts. Trust me, no one will find it if I'm the one hiding it. After a moment's consideration, Carol nodded and handed him the lunchbox. Be careful with it. Always, Arthur replied, tucking it securely inside his jacket. Let's go find out what Talos is up to, Carol suggested, turning toward the direction of the voices. Right then, Arthur said, following behind. But Carol. He looked pointedly at the inhibitor on her neck. You might want to think about taking that off soon. We could be facing Yanrog and his team very shortly. Might need all your power. Carol's hand moved unconsciously to the device. I don't know if I can control it. You can, Arthur assured her with unexpected gentleness. Have some trust in yourself. But no pressure. Do it when you're ready. His mouth quirked in a half-smile. Or when things get really dire. Whichever comes first. As Carol, Maria, and Fury became absorbed in the emotional reunion of Talos's family and subsequent explanations, Arthur quietly slipped to the periphery of the group. The lunchbox pressed against his chest, its contents calling to him even through the metal container. Chapter 47, Kree Confrontation. While the emotional reunion of Skrull families unfolded across the laboratory, Arthur stood slightly apart from the group, his attention focused entirely on the lunchbox and its contents. The Tesseract called to him, its cosmic energy pulsing like a heartbeat against his magical senses. He cast a quick glance around. Everyone was distracted, Talos embracing his wife and child, Carol deep in conversation with Maria, and Fury keeping a watchful eye on the proceedings while maintaining a safe distance from the jubilant Skrulls. No one was paying any attention to him. Perfect time for some testing. Arthur wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Direct contact with the Infinity Stone had nearly sent him hurtling across the universe. But there was another approach, one he recalled from the memories of his past life, the way the Sorcerer Supreme had used the Time Stone through the Eye of Agamotto, channeling and directing its power without touching it directly. He closed his eyes, extending his magical awareness toward the Tesseract. Instead of grasping its power, he wove a delicate filament of his own magic, a bridge, a conduit through which the stone's energy might flow in controlled amounts. Come on, he whispered, focusing intently. Just a little connection. At first, nothing happened. Then, like water finding a crack in a dam, a trickle of blue energy flowed along his magical construct. The sensation was extraordinary, not the overwhelming torrent he'd experienced before, but a steady stream that suffused his consciousness. His innate magical abilities related to space apparition, expansion charms, even portal creation suddenly felt more intuitive. The principles behind them crystallized in his mind with perfect clarity. Arthur smiled to himself. With practice, he could channel the Space Stone's power without risk, perhaps even create artifacts that would allow him permanent access to a fraction of its abilities. A personal portal device, perhaps, or rings that could fold space between them. Arthur ignored all the conversation around him and focused deeper. He began a tentative manipulation, trying to create a tiny portal to his room at the Slytherin dorms. Whir-clunk. The harsh, mechanical sound of heavy doors cycling open shattered his concentration. The nascent portal collapsed. Arthur quickly severed his connection to the Tesseract, his hand dropping casually to his side as he turned toward the sound. 6 figures in Kree Star Force armor entered the lab, weapons raised, fanning out with practiced efficiency. At their center walked Yanrog, his golden armor immaculate, his handsome face rigid with cold authority. His gaze fixed on Carol, sweeping over her new red and blue uniform with open disdain. Fraternizing with the enemy, Ver. Yanrog's voice was like ice shards. And what have you done to your uniform? My name, Carol replied, her voice low but steady, is Carol. Arthur watched, calculating. 6 Kree soldiers. Advanced weaponry. Vulnerable humans and Skrulls. Direct magical confrontation was too risky here. Better to let it play out. You seem confused, Yanrog continued, stepping forward, his tone dripping with condescension. These Skrull terrorists have twisted your mind. The only one twisting things was you, Carol retorted, anger flashing in her eyes. Her hands clenched. You lied. About who I am. Where I came from. I made you the best version of yourself. Yanrog's eyes held a disturbing possessiveness. What you are, you owe to me. To the Kree. Carol lunged, photon energy flaring around her fist. But Yanrog anticipated it, touching a device on his belt. What's given? Crackling blue energy erupted, wrapping around Carol like spectral chains. Her power sputtered, dimmed. She staggered, fighting against the invisible force draining her strength. "Can be taken away," Yanrog finished smugly. "You didn't give me these powers," Carol gasped, struggling. "The blast did." "And yet," Yanrog countered, stepping closer, "you can't control them." Desperate, remembering Arthur's words, Carol clawed at the inhibitor on her neck. Her fingers slipped on the smooth metal. Zap! An energy blast from Yanrog's wrist struck her squarely. She collapsed, unconscious. "Carol!" Maria cried out, moving forward instinctively. "Don't!" Fury grabbed Maria's arm, pulling her back. "You can't help her now." Arthur remained still. "Patience," he reminded himself. This was not the time to act. "Secure the target," Yanrog commanded. Two soldiers lifted Carol's limp form. "Find the energy core. Search everywhere." "Everyone." The Kree moved through the lab like efficient machines, tearing apart equipment, searching the personnel. They patted down Fury, confiscating his gun with contempt. Maria yielded nothing. They approached Arthur cautiously. He stood passively as they searched him. The notice me not charm held, their hands brushed right over the lunchbox, finding nothing. "No core, Commander," a soldier reported. Yanrog adjusted Carol's unconscious form over his shoulder. "No matter. Supreme Intelligence will clarify things for Ver soon enough." He nodded to the remaining Skrulls and humans. "Take them to the holding cells. Separate the Skrulls." Most of the Kree, including Yanrog, headed back towards their ship. 4 guards remained, gesturing with their weapons. Arthur, Fury, Maria, and Goose were marched down one sterile corridor, while Talos and his family were escorted away in the opposite direction. "Any bright ideas brewing back there, tour guide?" Fury whispered, scanning their surroundings. "Several," Arthur murmured, feeling the reassuring weight of the lunchbox. "Timing, Fury. It's all about the timing." They were shoved into a stark metal room. Bare walls, cold light. Before the door slid shut, one guard activated a scanner, running it over each captive. The scanner passed over Goose. It emitted a series of frantic, high-pitched chirps. The guard stared at the display, eyes widening. "Species. Flurkin. Threat level. High." The second guard immediately stepped forward, producing a complex-looking muzzle. With caution, he carefully fitted the device over the cat's head, securing it tightly. Goose merely blinked, seemingly unfazed. Next, the scanner swept over Maria, then Fury. A single, dismissive beep for each. "Species. Human. Threat level. Low to none." "That thing's busted," Fury grumbled, clearly insulted. Finally, the guard pointed the scanner at Arthur. The device went silent for a tense moment, then it emitted a high-pitched, sustained alarm tone. "Species. Human. Threat level, extreme. Recommended action. Eliminate immediately." The second guard's weapon leveled directly at Arthur's head. Fury and Maria spun around, staring at Arthur in shock. "Something you want to tell us, tour guide?" Fury asked, his voice dangerously quiet. The Kree guards exchanged terrified glances, fingers tightening on triggers. The air crackled with tension. Arthur met the barrels of their weapons without flinching. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face, utterly devoid of warmth. The harmless act vanished. "Well," he said, his voice deceptively light, almost conversational. "I was going to let Carol do all the work and just spectate. But now..." His grin sharpened. "Looks like I'll have to step in." Chapter 48, Escalation. The tension in the holding cell crystallized as the Kree guards' weapons leveled directly at Arthur's head. Their scanner's high-pitched alarm continued to blare. "Species, human. Threat level, extreme. Recommended action, eliminate immediately." Before the Kree could pull their triggers, Arthur raised his hands, showing them to be completely free of the energy cuffs that should have been binding him. The restraints clattered to the floor, useless. The guards' eyes widened in shock. They immediately pulled their triggers, but Arthur merely pushed his hands forward. The guards' arms jerked upward against their will, their energy weapons discharging harmlessly into the ceiling. In the split second of confusion that followed, Arthur's wand shot into his hand from a hidden holster on his forearm. Too precise, whispered cutting curses sliced through the air. The Kree soldiers crumpled to the floor, their expressions frozen in shock. Arthur sighed, tucking his wand away. He'd hoped to avoid direct involvement in the Kree-Skrull conflict, but now the Kree had marked him as a target. His policy on enemies was simple: don't have any, but if you must, don't let them live to come after you again. Well, how's the surprise, Agent Fury? Arthur asked, dusting off his hands. Maria stared at the fallen Kree, her face pale. What? How? She clearly had no knowledge of the hidden wizarding world. Fury's expression, however, showed dawning comprehension. Wizard. Should have figured it out from all the questions about the wizarding world and the fake name Merlin. That's why Carol trusts you. She knows your strength. His eyes narrowed. I'm guessing you two had a battle. Yes, with me defeating her, Arthur confirmed casually. Well, I don't think she could handle your powers, Fury observed. Arthur's lips quirked into a knowing smile. She will soon be way stronger than me. What? Fury looked confused. You'll know soon enough. Arthur waved his wand, releasing Fury from his restraints. You decide what to tell our clueless friend. I'll go looking for Carol, see if she needs any help. With another flick of his wand, Arthur levitated the fallen Kree soldiers and strode out of the holding cell, leaving Fury to help Maria and Goose with their restraints. In an adjacent room, Arthur unceremoniously stripped the Kree soldiers of their advanced Star Force suits. He'd had his eye on the technology since first seeing it. Without hesitation, he changed into one of the suits, storing the other away in his magically expanded pocket. The alien garment felt strange initially, but it adjusted to fit him perfectly. Using the wrist controls, he changed the colors to a sleek matte black. Perfect. He could experiment with the other features later. Making his way through the lab, Arthur passed the area where the Skrulls were being held. A series of quick, precise stunning spells dropped their Kree guards. Arthur left the unconscious soldiers to whatever fate Talos and his people would decide for them. Without explanation to the bewildered Skrulls, he continued forward. As he approached Carol's likely location, he found his path blocked by Minerva and several more Kree soldiers, weapons drawn. Their quick response surprised him. Had they discovered his escape already? Hold it right there, mage. Minerva commanded, her weapon trained on his chest. Arthur froze. They knew he was a mage? Then he remembered the Supreme Intelligence, of course. The AI must have seen everything and informed Jan Rog. Minerva's eyes narrowed as she took in his stolen uniform. Thief. Desecrating Star Force armor. Surrender the core and the suit, and perhaps your end will be swift. Arthur chuckled. Bit attached to the suit, actually. Rather fetching, don't you think? Also, forget about the core. That's mine now. Minerva's finger tightened on the trigger. Then die. Energy bolts erupted from the Kree squad's weapons. Arthur reacted instantly, conjuring a solid metal wall and sending it hurtling toward them. The Kree dove to avoid its path. Following up, Arthur unleashed a volley of cutting curses, expecting to end the confrontation quickly. To his shock, the Kree activated energy weapons on their arms, green force fields that they used to punch away his spells as if they were nothing more than light beams. Arthur's confidence faltered. He hadn't known their technology could counter magic so effectively. Carol had possessed no such defenses during their fight. While he processed this unexpected development, one of the Kree closed the distance with superhuman speed and landed a crushing blow that sent Arthur flying backward. As he struggled to his feet, the other Kree opened fire. Recovering quickly, Arthur conjured his strongest shield charm. If their tech could deflect his offensive spells, perhaps his defensive magic would work similarly against their weapons. A shimmering blue dome flared into existence around him, stopping the energy bolts. Great! How long can you stay behind that, mage? Minerva sneered, signaling her soldiers to maintain suppressive fire. Your spells won't hold forever. Oh, I'm just getting warmed up, Arthur replied, gathering his power for a counterattack. Just as he prepared to drop his shield and unleash a barrage of spells, Minerva received a communication. Curious, Arthur maintained his shield while the other Kree continued their assault. Minerva, Jan Rog's voice crackled, tight with urgency. Status update on the mage. Engaging now, Commander, she replied coolly. Subject is resisting. Inform the mage, Jan Rog's voice was laced with grim satisfaction, that surrendering and showing allegiance to the Supreme Intelligence is his best option. Ver will soon be back with the Kree, and his home planet will be no more. Ronan's accuser fleet has arrived in orbit, and the bombardment will begin soon. Arthur felt a chill colder than space itself run down his spine. Bombardment? Now? Carol was still captive. This was a massive deviation from the timeline he knew. Ronan wasn't supposed to arrive this quickly. Had his actions somehow changed the plot? Without Carol to defend Earth and scare Ronan away as in the original timeline, the planet was in imminent danger. Minerva smirked at the horror that must have shown on his face. Hear that, mage? You won't have a home soon. You'll be on the run like the Skrulls. Arthur didn't care about her taunts. He had more pressing concerns. Knowing time was running out, he acted decisively. Dropping his shield, he sent a powerful Bombarda Maxima at the Kree group, the explosive spell creating enough chaos for him to make his escape. Not waiting to see if the Kree had survived or worrying about how Fury and Maria might handle them, Arthur pulled out the Tesseract. Connecting with it as he had practiced earlier, he focused his mind on a single destination. With a flash of blue energy, he vanished from the ship. The empty corridor hung silent for a moment, the aftermath of magical combat still lingering in the air. Then, from beneath a pile of debris, Minerva emerged, bloodied but alive. Her lips curled into a snarl as she activated her communicator. Commander, the mage has escaped, with the core. And he's wearing one of our Star Force suits. In another part of the lab, Jan Rog stood observing Carol Danvers. She sat tied up by many energy cables and interfaced with the Supreme Intelligence. His communicator chirped with Minerva's report. Jan Rog's golden eyes narrowed. No matter. Let the mage run. Ronan will handle Earth, and the Supreme Intelligence will deal with Ver. Above them, invisible to human eyes, Ronan's warship entered Earth's atmosphere, weapons systems powering up for planetary bombardment. The timeline had indeed changed, and not for the better. Chapter 49, Desperate Measures. With a flash of blue energy, Arthur materialized back on Earth. The sudden transition from the sterile environment of Mar-Vell's laboratory to open air was disorienting, oxygen-rich atmosphere flooding his lungs after the recycled air of the space station. No time to savor it. No time to think. Using the flying technique he'd learned from Voldemort's memories during Harry's first year, Arthur shot upward into the sky with maximum speed. He needed to see the threat with his own eyes. The wind tore at his clothes as he ascended, the ground below shrinking with alarming speed. Clouds embraced him, cold and damp, before he burst through their ceiling into the crystal clarity above. Higher, faster, his determination pushing him beyond normal limits. The air grew dangerously thin. Each breath became a struggle, his lungs burning with inadequate oxygen. His vision began to darken around the edges. Bloody hell, Arthur gasped, fingers scrabbling at the collar of his stolen Kree suit. He located the activation node near his collarbone and pressed firmly. The suit responded instantly by forming a sleek helmet that completely covered his face. Fresh oxygen flooded his mask, and Arthur gulped it gratefully. That's more like it, he muttered, voice sounding alien through the helmet's filter. Now properly equipped, Arthur tilted his head back and searched the dark space. What he saw made his blood freeze. Ronan's accuser fleet hung in low orbit, 5 massive warships like obsidian blades against the stars. Their angular silhouettes blotted out like cosmic predators. Arthur's stomach clenched. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. Not while Carol was still a captive. As Arthur watched, dark apertures yawned open across the vessel's undersides. Launch bays. Within each, something glinted, the metallic sheen of missiles, dozens of them, primed and ready. Where is everyone? Arthur whispered. He scanned the skies desperately for reinforcements. Where was the Ancient One? Surely she'd foreseen this threat with her ability to perceive timelines. Where were the sorcerers of Camartage with their defensive portals? The Asgardians, supposedly Earth's ancient protectors? Weren't they obligated to defend Earth from exactly this type of existential threat? Even the Eternals, unlikely as it seemed, might emerge to save the planet they lived on. Seconds ticked by agonizingly, but no one appeared. No one was coming. The first missiles detached from their base, falling in nightmarish slow motion at first, then gathering momentum. Arthur counted feverishly 50, maybe 60 ballistic weapons, each capable of devastating a major city. Panic seized him, a cold vice around his chest. He wasn't ready for this. He'd come to study the Marvel Universe's power hierarchy, not save an entire planet from alien annihilation. He was supposed to observe Captain Marvel's battle, gauge her abilities, then slip away to continue his life. Fighting against Ronan's fleet was completely outside the syllabus. This isn't your world, a treacherous voice whispered in his mind, cold and seductive. Not your responsibility. Apparate away. Save yourself. The pragmatic Slytherin in him agreed completely. The logical move was retreat, preserve himself, return later with greater power, perhaps even avenge this day. Earth wouldn't be completely destroyed, humanity was resilient. Survivors would rebuild the world from the ashes. His fingers twitched, ready to form the gestures that would take him far from here. When a sickening realization struck him like a physical blow. This is my fault. The current desperate situation was his fault. His interference in Carol's story had accelerated events, altered the timeline. He'd disrupted the natural course of events where Carol broke free and confronted Ronan before the bombardment began. If Earth burned now, the blood was partly on his hands. Bloody hell, Arthur hissed. The first missile had nearly reached him, its conical tip gleaming in the sunlight. He needed to do something now. The tesseract pulsed in his hand, its blue glow intensifying as if sensing his desperation. An insane plan crystallized in his mind, dangerous, likely fatal, but possibly Earth's only chance. Arthur laughed softly, the sound hollow inside his helmet. He'd never pictured himself as the heroic type. Self-preservation had always been his guiding principle through 2 lifetimes. Yet here he was, preparing to sacrifice everything for a planet of strangers. Well, at least I'll make an impressive exit, he muttered. He gripped the tesseract with both hands, dissolving the magical barrier he'd carefully maintained between himself and the Infinity Stone. The Kree suit would probably provide some protection against the raw cosmic energy about to course through him. With a deep breath, Arthur closed his eyes and concentrated. He poured his entire magical core, his complete will into the space stone, not trying to control its infinite energy, but to guide it toward a single, desperate purpose. Redirect them back. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Space tore open around him like fabric ripped by impossible hands. High above, a shimmering portal materialized directly in the path of the nearest missile. The weapon plunged into the swirling blue vortex and vanished without a trace. An instant later, a corresponding portal opened high above it, ejecting the missile back out, now aimed directly at the Kree Accuser fleet. Aboard the Dark Aster, Ronan the Accuser stood on the command deck, watching with cold satisfaction as Earth's doom descended. The primitive planet would serve as an example to all who defied Kree authority. First wave impact in 30 seconds, reported a tactical officer. Ronan nodded, anticipating the cleansing destruction to follow. Then impossibility. His eyes widened as a shimmering blue tear appeared in space directly before one of his missiles. What is that? He demanded, stepping forward. Before anyone could respond, the missile vanished into the portal. An instant later, another portal opened directly above them, spewing the same missile back, now aimed at his own ship. Evasive maneuvers. Ronan bellowed. Raise shields. More portals blossomed across space, dozens of them, each swallowing a Kree missile only to redirect it back toward the fleet. Impossible, whispered one of his officers, fear evident in his voice. Deploy fighters. Ronan commanded, his rage building as he watched his own weapons turning against him. Intercept those missiles. Full power to forward shields. The fighters launched, sleek and deadly, racing to intercept the redirected missiles. Some succeeded, detonating the weapons at safe distance. Others missed, and explosions began to rock the fleet. Who dares? Ronan snarled, gripping his warhammer so tightly his knuckles whitened. What sorcery is this? Energy signature detected, called a science officer. It matches the core, Accuser. The core. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Where has it? No, Accuser. Different signature. Human. Ronan stared at the view screen, watching as more of his missiles disappeared into portals only to emerge aimed back at his fleet. Far below, Arthur's body trembled violently inside the Kree suit, every muscle straining against the overwhelming force flowing through him. Creating dozens of stable wormholes simultaneously wasn't just difficult, it was never meant to be possible for a human body. Blood trickled from his nose, spreading inside his helmet. Pain lanced through his skull like white-hot needles. His own magic fought desperately, weaving intricate shields around his cells, reinforcing his physical structure against the overwhelming tide of spatial energy. Arthur forced himself to continue, watching through pain-hazed eyes as Kree fighters scrambled to intercept their own redirected weapons. The scene above him transformed into chaos, explosions silently blooming across the darkness of space, fighter craft darting between them like fireflies, the massive accuser warships desperately maneuvering to evade destruction. He could see the Dark Aster's shields flaring brilliantly as they absorbed impact after impact. The flagship remained largely undamaged, but the smaller support vessels weren't faring as well. One took a direct hit to its propulsion system and began listing badly, venting atmosphere into space. "Not so invincible now, are you?" Arthur whispered through gritted teeth. He pushed harder, opening more portals, larger ones, redirecting the remaining missiles with deadly precision. Each new effort sent fresh waves of agony through his body. Inside the Kree suit, his skin began to glow with the same ethereal blue energy as the Tesseract itself. Despite the fighters' desperate interception attempts, enough missiles reached their targets to force the Kree fleet to break formation. The bombardment of Earth had been completely disrupted. One final missile, massive, likely carrying enough destructive power to level an entire continent, emerged from Ronan's flagship. Arthur summoned his remaining strength and formed the largest portal yet, swallowing the doomsday weapon and redirecting it toward the Dark Aster itself. The missile struck the flagship's shields head-on. Though it didn't penetrate, the impact was catastrophic enough to send the massive warship reeling. Emergency lights flashed across its hull as secondary systems failed under the strain. The flow of missiles gradually dwindled, then stopped completely. He'd done it. Earth was safe for now. Then came the cost. Arthur's magic gave out with the suddenness of a snapped cable. The final reserves drained by his desperate gambit, he began plummeting toward Earth, helpless as gravity reclaimed him. Worse still, without his magic to buffer the connection, the Tesseract's power flowed directly into his physical form, unfiltered and unchecked. Every cell in his body vibrated, destabilizing, threatening to simply come apart at the atomic level. So this was it. Arthur Hayes, the reborn wizard, falling from near space, facing two equally certain death scenarios: disintegration from cosmic energy overload or fatal impact with the ground. Both seemed equally likely, and both equally imminent. The strange thing was, Arthur didn't feel regret. He'd made a choice that went against every self-preserving instinct he'd cultivated across 2 lives. He'd chosen something greater than himself, foolish, perhaps, but necessary. The ground rushed up to meet him, accelerating faster and faster. Wind screamed past his helmet. The Tesseract's energy continued to surge through him, his body becoming increasingly translucent, increasingly unstable. Arthur closed his eyes, prepared for the end. "I wonder if I'll get a third life." Suddenly Arthur felt heat enveloping him, not the searing heat of atmospheric re-entry, but something different. Warm. Almost comforting. He sensed an orange glow through his closed eyelids. Was he in heaven? Chapter 50, Cosmic Awakening. Time rewound a few minutes, back to the space laboratory orbiting high above Earth. Yanrog's boots clicked an anxious rhythm against the metal floor as he paced around the containment chamber. His eyes remained fixed on Ver, who floated motionless in the interface with the Supreme Intelligence. Several minutes had stretched into an eternity, far longer than any normal session, and dread coiled tighter in his gut with each passing second. The faint glow beneath her skin had started as a subtle shimmer but now pulsed like a heartbeat of pure energy. "What's happening to her?" one of the Kree soldiers asked, his fingers twitching on his weapon settings. "No need to worry," Yanrog replied automatically, though his voice rang hollow even to his own ears. "The Supreme Intelligence will handle this." But the glow only intensified. Power fluctuated wildly throughout the chamber, lights strobing in chaotic patterns, control panels erupting in showers of sparks, the very air crackling with barely contained energy. Then, without warning, absolute darkness swallowed them whole. Emergency lights flickered to life a heartbeat later, revealing the impossible. Ver floated several inches above the containment chair, her entire body radiating blinding cosmic fire. The metal restraints had simply ceased to exist, reduced to atoms. Carol Danvers was awake. And she burned with the power of a star. A tsunami of gold and blue energy exploded outward in all directions. The blast hurled Yanrog and his Star Force team against walls and equipment like leaves in a hurricane, their bodies crumpling from the sheer force. One thought blazed through Carol's mind: Earth was under attack. The Supreme Intelligence had unwittingly revealed Ronan's invasion plan during their mental battle. She rocketed through the station's twisted corridors, leaving trails of light in her wake. As she rounded a corner, a familiar scene stopped her. Cold Maria and Fury pinned down behind overturned equipment, trading desperate shots with Minerva and her Kree squad. Talos's family huddled in a recessed doorway while Talos and other Skrulls fought alongside Fury. "Get down!" Carol's voice boomed with newfound power. Her friends dropped instantly, no questions asked. Carol unleashed a controlled blast that swept Minerva and her soldiers off their feet, sending them crashing against distant walls. Maria stared up at her glowing form, mouth hanging open. Carol? Is that really you? In the flesh, Carol grinned, her confidence blazing as bright as her aura. And then some. Fury's good eye widened to an almost comical degree. You know you're glowing, right? I'll explain later. Carol yanked them to their feet. First, you all need to get the hell out of here. The Quajet can get you back to Earth. Talos, take your people with them. What about you? Maria's voice cracked with worry. Carol's jaw set with determination. I've got to stop an alien fleet before it turns our planet to glass. By yourself. Maria grabbed her arm, then quickly let go from the heat. Carol's head snapped around. Wait, where's Merlin? Fury and Maria exchanged puzzled looks. He freed us from captivity, Fury explained quickly. Said he was looking for you, then disappeared. That blue Kree lady was asking about him too and she was pissed. Carol's mind raced, but there was no time. We need to move. Now. She escorted them to the docking bay. As the Quajet's engines roared to life and carried her friends to safety, Carol stood at the platform's edge, staring into the infinite black. She closed her eyes, centering herself. When they opened again, they blazed with orange-gold fire. Her binary form ignited fully. Carol shot forward like a comet, leaving the station behind in a streak of light. Her trajectory took her directly toward Earth, toward Ronan's fleet, toward the battle she knew awaited her. But as she approached Earth's outer atmosphere, an unexpected sight made her slow her approach. Blue portals, dozens of them, had opened in the space between Earth and Ronan's fleet. She watched in disbelief as missiles disappeared into these shimmering gateways, only to emerge from corresponding portals aimed back at the Kree ships. What in the world? Carol murmured. She scanned the area, searching for the source of this impossible phenomenon. Finally, she spotted him, a lone figure in a matte black Kree suit, floating in the upper atmosphere, arms extended. In his hands glowed a familiar blue cube, the Tesseract. Even through the suit's mask, Carol somehow knew it was Merlin. No one else could have orchestrated such a defense. As she watched, the last of the missiles disappeared into a newly formed portal, emerging directly in front of Ronan's flagship. The impact sent the massive vessel listing to one side, emergency systems visibly activating across its hull. She was about to fly to him when disaster struck. The figure in black suddenly went limp, his body beginning to freefall toward Earth. Worse still, blue energy from the Tesseract appeared to be consuming him, his entire form beginning to glow with the same dangerous light as the cube. No! Carol shouted, accelerating instantly. She streaked through the atmosphere, breaking the sound barrier. The figure fell faster and faster, his body now completely enveloped in pulsating blue light that threatened to tear him apart. Carol pushed herself harder, faster, her hand outstretched, desperately trying to close the gap. Her fingers closed around his arm just before he would have struck the ground. The momentum nearly pulled her down with him, but she compensated with a burst of energy, arresting their fall. The Tesseract was still clutched in his rigid fingers, its energy flowing unchecked into his body. Carol immediately recognized the danger. Carefully lowering them both to the ground, Carol pried the Tesseract from his grasp and set it aside on the ground. Then she placed her hands on his chest and began to draw the excess energy of the Tesseract into herself. Blue light flowed from his body into hers, the cosmic radiation finding a more compatible host in her enhanced physiology. Gradually, the blue glow faded from his body. She gently set him down on the grass. For a moment, she feared she'd arrived too late, but then his chest rose with a shallow breath. After several tense moments, his eyes fluttered open. Am I dead? Arthur croaked, voice barely audible. No, you're not, Carol replied. But you almost were. Thankfully I reached you in time to catch you. Thanks, he managed. I thought I was a goner. With obvious effort, he reached up and deactivated the helmet of his Kree suit. He needed to breathe fresh air. The nanites retracted, revealing his face, and Carol blinked in surprise. This wasn't the same man she'd met in California. The face was younger, the features different. He looked like a teenager, not the 30-something British man she'd confronted outside the Blockbuster. Why has your face changed? She demanded. Were you disguised the whole time? Arthur grimaced, looking confused. Then understanding dawned in his eyes. My magic. He whispered. It's completely drained. I guess the disguise can't hold. So you were lying to me from the beginning. Carol felt a flash of anger cut through her concern. Same reason as disguising my name, Arthur explained weakly. Don't want government agencies to disturb my life. But I feel cheated. Sorry, Arthur said, genuinely apologetic. Nothing personal. Just, habit. Taking precautions. Carol wanted to be angry longer, but she looked at his injured form and felt her irritation fade. I forgive you, she said finally. Least I can do for you saving the planet. However, I think we're due for a proper introduction. She smiled. Carol Danvers. Former U.S. Air Force test pilot. Now a glowing superwoman. Arthur reached for her hand but didn't have the strength to pull himself up. Arthur Hayes, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Wizard. Currently regretting every life choice that led to this moment. You're younger than I thought, she observed. How old are you actually? Arthur winced. 18. Though right now I feel about 90. Carol's eyebrows shot up. 18? And here I used to feel accomplished for being the youngest female test pilot in my unit. She shook her head. 18 years old and you just held off an alien armada alone. I really didn't want that on my resume, Arthur replied weakly, but someone didn't listen to me and get the inhibitor off before getting captured. Forced me to swoop in and play the hero. Sorry. Carol began, but before she could continue, a shadow fell across them. She looked up to see Ronan's warships repositioning in the sky above. The accuser had regrouped, and knowing that Arthur was down, they were preparing a second wave of attacks. Looks like the aliens want more beating, Arthur said, his voice strained. All yours, Carol. She nodded, rising to her feet. Leave it to me. Energy surged through Carol's body once more, igniting her from within. She launched skyward, a reverse meteor streaking toward the enemy. Missiles rained down. Carol intercepted them casually, punching through their shells and detonating them miles above. But defense wasn't enough. She rocketed into space itself, charging the warships head-on. Fighter squadrons swarmed to stop her. Carol tore through them like tissue paper, her photon blasts an invulnerable body making short work of their numbers. She targeted the damaged support ships first. One exploded spectacularly as she punched straight through its core. The second suffered the same fate moments later. Finally, she positioned herself before Ronan's flagship, arms crossed, radiating such intense energy that she outshone the sun itself to observers below. Inside the dark aster, Ronan the accuser white-knuckled his war hammer. What is she? He snarled at the view screen. Unknown, accuser, his tactical officer stammered. Our weapons are useless. 2 ships destroyed in seconds. Ronan's jaw clenched so hard it creaked. Retreat. Set course for Hala. The words tasted like ash. He silently vowed revenge. The Dark Aster's engines flared. The massive warship turned tail, its remaining support vessel limping behind. As the fleet fled, Carol spotted movement below 3 Kree fighters screaming toward Arthur's position. Whether for revenge or the Tesseract, she didn't care. Arthur couldn't defend himself at the moment. Yon-Rogg opened fire as she approached. Carol weaved through his shots effortlessly, then vaporized his wingman with casual energy blasts. Finding himself alone, Yon-Rogg tried to run. Carol pursued at matching speed, playing with him like a cat with a mouse. Finally, she cut across his path, forcing a violent evasive maneuver that sent his fighter spinning out of control. He crash-landed near Arthur's location. Carol touched down yards from the smoking wreckage. Yon-Rogg crawled out, his golden armor cracked and dented. Blue blood trickled from a gash on his forehead as he stumbled to his feet. With deliberate slowness, he holstered his weapon and raised his hands. Turn off the light show, he challenged, trying to sound confident despite his obvious fear. Prove you can beat me without. Carol had 0 patience left. A casual photon blast caught him square in the chest, hurling him backward into a boulder with enough force to crack the stone. She strode over and grabbed his collar, dragging the groaning Kree toward his damaged escape pod. After dumping him unceremoniously in the pilot's seat, she punched coordinates into the navigation system. I can't go back empty-handed, Yon-Rogg wheezed, clutching his ribs. The Supreme Intelligence will. You won't be empty-handed, Carol interrupted coldly. I'm sending you back with a message. Tell the Supreme Intelligence that I'm coming to end it. The war. The lies. All of it. Without waiting for a response, she slammed the hatch shut and placed her palm against the hull. A concentrated photon blast supercharged the pod's engines, launching it skyward in a streak of light that quickly vanished among the stars. Carol watched until it disappeared, then turned and flew back toward Arthur. The immediate danger had passed. Now they needed to regroup, recover, and figure out the next move. Chapter 51, Aftermath. Carol touched down gracefully on the grassy field where she had left Arthur. The golden glow surrounding her body faded like a sunset as she approached him. Arthur had managed to prop himself against a large rock, looking rather worse for wear. Scattered around him lay an odd assortment of items, vials filled with shimmering liquids that seemed to move of their own accord, small pouches of iridescent powder, and bandages infused with glittering substances. His fingers trembled visibly as he uncorked another potion bottle. Emergency supplies? Carol asked, crouching beside him. Arthur nodded weakly. Not doing much good, I'm afraid. He downed a vial of silvery liquid that writhed unnaturally in the glass. His face contorted as he swallowed. Disgusting as always. Are you going to be okay? Carol's brow furrowed with genuine concern. Not particularly. Arthur set the empty vial down with a shaky hand. Complete magical depletion is rather dangerous. These potions can patch physical wounds, restore blood, even mend bones. But magical depletion? That's like trying to refill an empty lake with bottled water. How long will it take to recover? Days, possibly weeks for a full recovery. Arthur attempted to stretch and immediately winced. There are other injuries too, but without my magic, I can't even properly diagnose the extent of the damage. Carol studied his pale face. I should take you to a hospital. Absolutely not. Arthur waved the suggestion away. Normal doctors would be utterly useless with magical injuries. I'll need to consult a healer from the wizarding world later. A comfortable silence fell between them as Arthur administered another potion to himself. In the distance, the wreckage of Jan Rog's fighter still smoldered against the bright blue sky. So, Arthur finally said, you just let your commander go like that? Do you have a soft spot for him? Carol's expression hardened. I had to send a message to the Kree. Besides, technically, he did save my life by taking me back to Hala after the explosion and giving me that blood transfusion. She shrugged. Now we're even. Fair enough. Arthur nodded. So what's next for you? Carol looked skyward, her eyes reflecting the endless blue. I've made enemies with the Kree and their supreme intelligence. This fight isn't over. She sighed. Meanwhile, I need to finish Dr. Lawson's work. Help the Skrulls find a home. So you're going to become a hero with a self-sacrificing nature. Arthur raised an eyebrow. You're still young, right? Giving up your life on Earth and your friends for some aliens. Says the guy who nearly died saving Earth, Carol shot back with a smirk. That's different, Arthur protested. This planet is my home. Also, I didn't have any other options. You don't have to fight the Kree or help find the Skrulls a home. Carol shook her head. You won't understand. To me, it feels right. I want to help Dr. Lawson finish her life's goal. I want to defeat the Kree and take revenge for the years they stole from me, for the things I did while working as their soldier. She paused, looking at her hands. Except for Maria, I don't really have anything left on this planet. And these new powers. She flexed her fingers, a subtle glow emanating from beneath her skin. I want to do something good with them. I don't want to waste them. Arthur studied her for a moment. You're right. I don't understand. He sighed. With great power comes great responsibility. Carol's eyes widened slightly. Wow. That's actually really profound. Where'd you get that? Heard some old uncle saying it to his nephew, Arthur replied with a half smile. Moving on. This might sound terribly corny, but you have more friends than just Maria on this planet. Although we met just yesterday, after going through this alien adventure together, we can be considered friends. Fury probably thinks so too. Just as Carol opened her mouth to reply, she looked up sharply. Arthur followed her gaze to see the Quajet approaching, its engines breaking the afternoon quiet. Speak of the devil, Arthur murmured. With considerable effort, he pushed himself up to standing, legs shaking from the exertion. Once upright, he activated the mask on his stolen Kree suit, nanites flowing smoothly across his face until he was completely hidden behind the sleek black helmet. Going to keep secrets from someone you just called a friend? Carol asked, eyebrow raised. I called him your friend. Not mine. Arthur's voice sounded slightly mechanized through the helmet. While Fury has been decent with me during these couple of days, it's rather difficult for me to trust someone with a spy background. Besides, he has to answer to his superiors in the agency. The quajet landed in a swirl of dust and grass. The ramp lowered with a pneumatic hiss, and out came Fury, Maria, and the Skrulls. Maria broke into a run, wrapping Carol in a fierce hug that nearly lifted her off the ground. Fury approached more cautiously, surveying the aftermath of the battle. Arthur immediately noticed the fresh bandage covering one of his eyes. It's been a hell of a mission, Fury said, coming to stand before Arthur and Carol. Came after a call about a weird woman in a paintball suit, which turned into a full fight with aliens. You enjoyed the adventure though, right? Arthur asked, voice distorted by the mask. Fury's mouth twitched upward. Yes. What's with the mask, tour guide? I'm a bit knackered, Arthur replied smoothly. The mask is to hide my identity from you. A wizard is afraid of little old me. Fury's tone was light, but his good eye watched carefully. You? No. Arthur shook his head. But I don't want people from your little government club coming after me. I kill them in anger, and suddenly I'm a villain on worldwide wanted lists. Not exactly how I'd prefer to live my life. You've been fed lies about government agencies, Fury countered. We don't do anything like that. We're law-abiding. Ask around and see if anyone agrees with that assessment. Enough, you two, Carol interrupted, placing herself between them. This is time for celebrations. Let's go back to Maria's place. Talos stepped forward, his green skin shifting slightly in the sunlight. Yes, let's go. Where is the core? Arthur was just about to point to where Carol had left the tesseract when movement caught his eye. Goose was sniffing curiously at the glowing blue cube. Before anyone could react, tentacles erupted from the cat-like creature's mouth, engulfing the tesseract in one swift motion. The group stood in stunned silence as Goose calmly licked his paws, looking completely ordinary again. Anyone know where the Flurkin stored the core and how to get it out? Carol asked finally. Everyone shook their heads. Arthur's eyebrow twitched furiously behind his mask. After experiencing the raw power of the space stone, he desperately wanted to keep it for himself. He didn't care if it ruined the plot with the tesseract, he would have the power to fight any changes that occurred. He'd planned to hide it away, but the tesseract couldn't be stored in any of his expandable bags, and in his current state, he couldn't handle it. He had intended to retrieve it later. But now, with Goose swallowing it, Arthur had no idea when the creature would spit the thing out. One thing was certain, though, once it did, Arthur was determined to steal it, even if that meant robbing S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury, Arthur said casually, breaking the awkward silence, I've been meaning to ask. Was it your pet cat that scratched your eye? Fury snorted in response but didn't elaborate further. Goose trotted alongside them, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Arthur narrowed his eyes at the Flurkin. The blasted creature seemed to be looking at him with a smug expression, as if it knew it had foiled his plans. Does your alien cat dislike water? Arthur asked innocently. Carol shot him a suspicious look. Why? No reason, Arthur replied, his tone far too casual. Just wondering if alien cats hate baths too. With nothing else to be done about the tesseract, the unusual group boarded the quajet. As the engines roared to life, Arthur settled into a seat, his body aching with every small movement. As the engines roared to life, Arthur took one last look at the battlefield where he'd nearly died stopping an alien invasion. This wasn't how he'd planned his Marvel adventure to unfold. Nearly dying certainly hadn't been on the itinerary. The experience had taught him a valuable lesson, though no matter how meticulously you plan, things rarely go perfectly. You must learn to adapt. For now, the Marvel storyline was over. Carol and the Skrulls would soon leave for the stars. Meanwhile, Arthur still had the final task of the Tri-Wizard tournament looming ahead. He hoped that he could recover in time, but something told him it wouldn't be that simple. He could feel the Space Stone's power had changed something fundamental within him. The energy had left a lingering signature, a subtle alteration to his magical core that he couldn't quite identify yet. He needed to examine whether this change was a good change or a bad change. Chapter 52, Back to Hogwarts. The evening at Maria's house proved surprisingly enjoyable, despite Arthur's lingering exhaustion. What struck him most was Fury's behavior, laughing openly, telling jokes, and showing a warmth that seemed entirely at odds with the image of the stern S.H.I.E.L.D. director Arthur remembered from the films. "Another beer, Fury?" Maria called from the kitchen. "Keep 'em coming," Fury replied with a grin that transformed his entire face. Arthur watched this display with quiet fascination. Perhaps the man hadn't yet been hardened by years of paranoia and responsibility? Or maybe this was simply a side he never showed in professional settings. Whatever the reason, the camaraderie didn't extend to Arthur. Whenever their eyes met, Fury's expression would cool instantly, his good eye assessing Arthur with barely concealed suspicion. The feeling was entirely mutual. Arthur couldn't trust Fury, and Fury clearly couldn't trust him. "You sure you don't want to stay another day?" Carol asked as she pulled Maria's car into the drop-off area at Louis Armstrong New Orleans Airport. Arthur shook his head. "Better this way. I need to sort out these injuries and examine what's happened to my magic as soon as possible." The airport bustled with evening travelers despite the late hour. Through the windows, Arthur could see families reuniting, business people striding purposefully toward taxis, and airline staff navigating the controlled chaos with practiced ease. "So when do you think we're going to meet next?" Arthur asked, making no move to exit the car. Carol shrugged. "I'll visit the planet every now and then." "Remember to do that," Arthur said, his tone more serious than he'd intended. "While your powers might give you more years to live, humans like Maria and Monica are mortal. Don't get so caught up in galactic affairs that you forget to come back." "I won't forget," she promised quietly, her eyes fixed on the dashboard. Arthur cleared his throat. "So do I get a pager or anything? I saw the one you gave Fury. I'm rather jealous." A smile tugged at Carol's lips. "You don't need it. You can use the Kree suit to contact me. The pager is much cooler. You can exchange with Fury. I'm sure he'll agree." Arthur scoffed. "Too late for that. My flight leaves in a few minutes." "Make better excuses," Carol said, rolling her eyes. Silence settled between them, comfortable but tinged with the awkwardness of a goodbye neither seemed eager to say. "So this is it," Arthur finally said. "Next time you come, let's spar again." Carol's eyebrows shot up. "Are you sure? You've seen me fight. You think you stand a chance? You think I'll stay at only this level?" Arthur replied with mock indignation. "Perhaps I'll be as strong as you or stronger the next time we meet." "That's good," Carol nodded, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I was thinking I had no proper way of taking revenge for what happened at the parking lot." "Hang on. You still hold a grudge about that?" Arthur protested. "Not my fault someone decided to attack without clarifying the situation first." "As if a weird guy coming out of nowhere and acting all mysterious didn't deserve a beating," Carol countered. "If you weren't injured right now, I'd give you some. Wait for a proper beatdown next time we meet." "We'll see who gets beat down," Arthur said confidently. "While you're out there fighting aliens, I'll be safely practicing and growing my powers." "You won't stand a chance." "We'll see." Carol's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and Arthur sensed she was already making mental notes to train harder. Good. They exchanged goodbyes, and Arthur watched the car pull away, Carol's blonde hair visible through the rear window until she turned a corner and disappeared from sight. Arthur looked around and seeing that no one was watching him, he slipped into a deserted corner and donned the invisibility cloak. There was absolutely no chance he would leak his destination to anyone who might be watching. He hadn't even booked a ticket. The habit, or what some might call paranoia, would stick until he was as strong as Carol, or perhaps never. Getting through security and boarding the flight to Los Angeles proved almost laughably simple with the cloak. When passengers began boarding, he simply melded into a crowded group. The gate attendant remained oblivious to the extra person slipping past. On the plane, he found an empty seat in the back and settled in. Now he had to stay awake the whole flight. He was tired, but falling asleep was too risky. The cloak might slip off, someone would try to sit in the seemingly empty seat, or he would miss the deboarding. None of these scenarios were acceptable. 8 hours later, Arthur was back in his Los Angeles manor, collapsing onto his bed without bothering to change his clothes. Every muscle ached, and his magical core felt like a drained battery, present but utterly useless. He slept deeply, dreamlessly, for 10 straight hours. When he finally awakened, the evening sun was casting long shadows across his bedroom floor. His body felt marginally better, though his magic remained frustratingly depleted. After a quick meal and change of clothes, Arthur used the vanishing cabinet to return to Hogwarts. According to his watch, it was early morning on the 19th of June. Arthur had left his spoils from the adventure, the Kree suits and weapons, back home in London. He wasn't sure what Hogwarts' high magical concentration would do to such advanced technology. He had no intention of destroying the hard-won prizes from his nearly deadly adventure. Next, he made his way to the hospital wing. It was early in the morning, but he knew Madame Pomfrey would be awake. As soon as she saw Arthur, Madame Pomfrey knew something was wrong with him. "Mr. Hayes? What's wrong with you?" she demanded, immediately alert despite the early hour. Arthur started, "Experiment gone wrong." But Madame Pomfrey didn't wait for explanations. She had her wand out and was already casting diagnostic spells. Her expression grew increasingly grave as she worked. Chapter 53, The Healing. In the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey's wand moved in increasingly complex patterns as she cast diagnostic spell after diagnostic spell. With each new incantation, her expression grew darker. "Mr. Hayes," she finally said, lowering her wand, "I'm detecting numerous hidden injuries throughout your body. Partially healed fractures in all your bones, micro tears in your muscle tissue, and what appears to be cellular degradation consistent with extreme destructive magic exposure." Arthur remained silent as she continued. He was shocked by Madame Pomfrey's diagnosis. He knew he was badly injured, but hadn't realized it was this severe. If he hadn't taken those emergency potions, he would have likely crumbled entirely. "Most concerning is your magical core. It's recovering, but at an alarmingly slow rate." She fixed him with a stern look. "No experiment could cause this pattern of injuries. I've been a healer for over 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it. What have you experienced in the few days since your NEWT exams, Mr. Hayes?" "It was a magical ritual gone wrong," Arthur offered weakly. Madame Pomfrey's lips thinned to a tight line. "Mr. Hayes, whatever caused these injuries was far more traumatic than any ritual. This looks more like you were nearly destroyed from the inside by something." When Arthur didn't respond, she sighed. "I won't press you further. It's clear you won't tell me the truth. However, this is beyond my expertise. You need specialized care." Though visibly angry, she pushed it aside for now. The scolding could wait until he was fully healed. "What do you suggest?" Arthur asked, sitting up slowly. "St. Mungo's. Immediately." Her tone left no room for argument. "The head of magical core trauma should examine you. Shouldn't we inform Professor Dumbledore or—" "There's no time," she interrupted, already moving toward the fireplace in her office. "Your core's condition could deteriorate if left untreated." Without further discussion, she grabbed a handful of fluo powder, gestured for Arthur to join her in the large fireplace, and threw the powder down. "St. Mungo's Hospital, emergency reception," she called clearly. Green flames engulfed them, and with a disorienting swirl, they vanished from Hogwarts. The reception area of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries was surprisingly quiet for a morning hour. A bored-looking witch at the desk barely glanced up as they arrived. "Magical core trauma, 4th floor," she said automatically upon seeing Madame Pomfrey's uniform. Madame Pomfrey guided Arthur through pristine corridors that reminded him of a Victorian hospital merged with a wizard's study. Portraits of famous healers watched their progress, some offering unsolicited diagnostic opinions as they passed. "Looks like magical exhaustion to me," called one particularly ancient-looking wizard. "Nonsense, it's clearly a case of splinched magic," countered another. Arthur ignored them, focusing instead on the hospital itself. Everything was immaculately clean, yet distinctly old-fashioned like the rest of the wizarding world. After being on an advanced alien spaceship, the contrast was striking. Gas lamps instead of electric lights. Floating quills taking notes instead of computers. Healers in lime green robes bustling about. They finally reached a door marked Healer Bartholomew Cadwallader, specialist in magical core trauma. Bit of a mouthful, that name, Arthur thought. The healer himself was a tall, gaunt man with piercing blue eyes and a neatly trimmed silver beard. He greeted Madame Pomfrey warmly but assessed Arthur with clinical detachment. "So this is our mysterious patient," he said, gesturing for Arthur to sit on an examination table. "Poppy has sent me a quick overview via Patronus. Let's have a proper look, shall we?" His diagnostic spells were even more complex than Madame Pomfrey's, creating shimmering patterns of light that hovered over different parts of Arthur's body. Where Madame Pomfrey's spells had taken minutes, healer Cadwallader's examination lasted nearly an hour. Arthur, despite considering himself quite good at healing, had no knowledge of these spells. It was a stark reminder of his limitations. He could work hard and use the Ravenclaw diadem to study faster, but he lacked the books and masters to learn from. Advanced knowledge was kept too secret in the wizarding world, particularly difficult for a Muggle-born to access. "Young man," the healer finally said, setting his wand down, "I need to know exactly what happened to you. No half-truths or vague explanations. The condition of your magical core is unlike anything I've seen in 40 years of healing." Arthur met the healer's stern gaze and sighed. There was no avoiding it. "I came into contact with an artifact of great power," he admitted reluctantly. "At first I was able to control it using my magic, ensuring there was no direct contact. Then my magic was consumed and there was direct contact with too much power. It nearly killed me from the inside out." "What kind of artifact?" Cadwallader pressed. "I don't have it anymore. A mysterious and powerful wizard took it after saving me." The healer's eyes narrowed. "Did the artifact have any specialties?" "Yes," Arthur replied carefully. "It wasn't magical and felt like something else entirely. I cannot say anything more." Cadwallader nodded. "I understand. Secrecy oaths and all that." He picked up his wand again. "What matters now is your treatment. The potions you took after the incident have helped with the surface injuries, but they're inadequate for your condition. You are hurt too badly and too deep." "What do I need?" Arthur asked. "A comprehensive magical reconstitution ritual." Cadwallader began sketching complex runes on a piece of parchment. "It's a bit like a rebirth ritual. It will address the hidden injuries and restore your magic core at the same time." Arthur recognized some of the runes. "Are magical rituals legal?" "Yes, when performed under supervision of a master at ritual arts." "But I've never heard of rituals being used for treatment," Arthur said skeptically. "This isn't standard treatment," the healer confirmed. "It's reserved for cases of extreme magical trauma. The ritual requires rare magical ingredients and is quite costly." "What's the cost?" Arthur asked directly. Cadwallader wrote a figure on the parchment and slid it across to Arthur. Arthur's eyes widened slightly. It cost a fortune. The amount represented approximately 1/4 of what he'd earned from selling the basilisk parts, a sum utterly unaffordable for most wizarding families. "The ingredients are rare," Cadwallader explained. "Phoenix tears, powdered horn of a Ukrainian iron belly, essence of belladonna harvested during a solar eclipse." He hesitated. "If it's too much, we can attempt a partial healing with standard methods, though I cannot guarantee the results." "No," Arthur said firmly. "I'll authorize the full amount from my Gringotts vault. I want complete healing." Arthur didn't want to leave behind hidden injuries. He might be getting ripped off, but not by much. The ingredients were genuinely costly, and with rituals being restricted knowledge, the high price made sense. If it worked, he wouldn't care about the money. If not and he was being scammed, then the healer should hope he never recovered. Relief flickered across the healer's face. "Excellent. We'll begin preparations immediately. You'll need to remain here overnight while we prepare the ritual chamber and gather the ingredients." Arthur spent an uncomfortable night in a private room at St. Mungo's. Healers came and went, administering preliminary potions that tasted progressively worse. By morning, his tongue felt coated with a mixture of ash, sour milk, and what he imagined troll earwax might taste like. "It's time," announced healer Cadwallader, appearing at dawn. Arthur followed the healer to the ritual room. On the way, healer Cadwallader said, "Now, I must warn you, this ritual will be unpleasant. Possibly quite painful. Your body and magic will resist the forced reconstitution." Arthur wasn't concerned. He felt nothing could match what he had experienced a few days ago. He would be soon proven wrong. They entered a circular chamber deep within the hospital. The room was dominated by an intricate runic circle inscribed on the floor, glowing faintly blue. Crystal vials containing substances of various colors were positioned at specific points around the circle. "Remove your hospital gown and lie in the center," instructed Cadwallader. "The ritual works best with direct contact to your skin." Arthur complied, and then some assistant healers positioned themselves at cardinal points around the circle while Cadwallader took the northernmost position. "We begin," he intoned, raising his wand. The ritual started slowly, with a gentle warmth spreading through Arthur's body. Rather pleasant, actually. Then the heat intensified, becoming uncomfortable, then painful, then agonizing. Arthur clenched his jaw to keep from screaming as liquid fire seemed to flow through his veins. The sensation was disturbingly similar to what he'd experienced when the Tesseract's power consumed him, that same feeling of being unmade from within. The pain was almost identical. Through watering eyes, he watched the runic circle flare with blinding light. The contents of the crystal vials rose into the air as liquid streams, spiraling toward him before sinking into his skin. Just when he thought he couldn't endure another second, a new sensation emerged like cool water flowing through his burning body, soothing the pain. His magical core, damaged and weak, seemed to pulse in response, drawing in the healing energies. The ritual lasted 3 excruciating hours. By the end, Arthur lay exhausted but strangely invigorated. He felt better than he had in months, perhaps better than he had ever felt. "Remarkable," murmured Cadwallader, examining him afterward. "Has anyone survived this ritual before me?" Arthur asked weakly. "That was rather intense. To tell you the truth, the survival rate is less than 10%. Brilliant. Why didn't you mention that before I agreed to it?" Arthur's tone was dry. "The ritual was your only option for complete healing," Cadwallader replied. "Any other method and you would have lived only for a few years before your body collapsed." Arthur didn't like this omission, but since it was over and he had recovered as promised, he decided not to hold a grudge. "Your body has accepted the healing completely," Cadwallader continued. "The fractures are mended, the cellular damage reversed." He frowned slightly. "Your magical core, however. What about it?" Arthur asked, alarmed. "It's healed, but changed." The healer performed another diagnostic spell. "The energy signature is different. Not damaged, just altered. I've never seen anything quite like it. Can you try casting any spell?" Arthur didn't have his wand with him, so he tried wandless magic, but nothing happened. He borrowed a wand from an assistant, but still nothing happened. "This is odd," Cadwallader muttered, then started casting more diagnostic spells. "There's nothing wrong with you physically," he finally said. "I'm stumped. The only explanation I can think of is that your body is too weak to handle your magic. The size of your core is bigger than any I've seen in my life. Even Dumbledore has a core smaller than yours." Arthur took the news surprisingly well. He was relieved it wasn't a hopeless situation. The Marvel world had many ways of gaining physical strength, and he could work on that. The good news was that he was completely healed otherwise. The bad news was that he had a tournament to take part in, and now it looked like he had to do it without magic. Chapter 54, Hard Truths. Arthur stumbled out of the fireplace in Madame Pomfrey's office, brushing soot from his robes. The flow journey back from St. Mungo's had been particularly uncomfortable after the extensive post-ritual tests and examinations. Everything was technically fine if one considered being unable to use magic fine. "Steady now, Mr. Hayes," Madame Pomfrey said firmly, emerging from the green flames behind him. "The healed body might require some getting used to. Any dizziness or discomfort?" "I'm feeling perfectly fine, Madame Pomfrey," Arthur replied. "Better than ever." Madame Pomfrey fixed him with a stern look. "I hope so, and I also hope you understood the severity of what you experienced. The healers told me your survival was nothing short of miraculous. So I've been informed." Repeatedly. "This is not a joking matter," she said sharply. "Whatever adventure you undertook nearly killed you. I expect you to show better judgment in the future. No more mysterious adventures or dangerous experiments with unknown magics. Is that clear?" "Crystal," Arthur replied, just wanting the lecture to end. Madame Pomfrey sighed, clearly unconvinced by his half-hearted agreement. "The headmaster wishes to see you immediately," she informed him, her tone suggesting this wasn't a casual invitation. "He was most insistent." "Brilliant," Arthur muttered. "Just what I need after a spectacularly eventful week." Interrogations. "The password is Fizzing Whizbee," she added, ignoring his complaint. "Do try not to antagonize him. His position requires him to know why a Hogwarts student disappeared and came back in the condition you came back in." Arthur made his way to the headmaster's office with reluctant steps. The gargoyle leapt aside at the password, and the spiral staircase carried him upward to a door that swung open before he could knock. Dumbledore's office looked as it always did, silver instruments whirring softly on spindly tables, Fawkes preening on his golden perch, and ancient books lining the walls. The headmaster himself stood by the window, while the sorting hat sat on its shelf, looking as smug as a piece of tattered fabric could manage. "Good afternoon, Hat," Arthur said pointedly, nodding to the ancient artifact before turning to Dumbledore. Headmaster. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. Is the Sorting Hat more important than the headmaster of Hogwarts, Mr. Hayes? He was the one I sorely missed in the second task, Headmaster, Arthur replied with deliberate casualness. Also, I respect it more. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Dumbledore moved to his desk, his expression carefully controlled. And what have I done to earn such disrespect? He asked quietly. Arthur sighed, taking the seat across from Dumbledore without being invited. Should we go down this rabbit hole, Headmaster? In my position as an isolated pariah in this castle with nothing much to do, I've developed quite the talent for observation. And my observations haven't exactly enhanced my regard for you. I have always valued honest feedback, Dumbledore said, steepling his long fingers. Humor me. All right. Arthur settled more comfortably in his chair. Let's have this final conversation, since I doubt we'll have an opportunity to speak so candidly again, what with me leaving the wizarding world and you being. He gestured vaguely, well, not getting any younger. You make things sound rather ominous, Mr. Hayes, Dumbledore remarked. I assure you I have many years ahead of me yet. I'm just being realistic. Arthur leaned forward. Let's start with the fundamentals, shall we? The treatment of Muggleborns in the British wizarding world is appalling. You can't possibly deny that fact, right? You're supposedly a great light wizard with positions of tremendous influence, yet you've done nothing substantive to improve their situation. Dumbledore opened his mouth to object, but Arthur raised a hand. Perhaps you have perfectly reasonable excuses you couldn't single-handedly reform ministry laws, despite being chief warlock and supreme mugwump. But surely after defeating Grindelwald, or following Voldemort's defeat, you possessed the political capital to enact meaningful change. You chose not to. His eyes narrowed. But even accepting that limitation, what about Hogwarts, where your word as the headmaster is law? You could stop the bullying of Muggleborns. You could ban derogatory terms like mudblood with a single decree. But you don't. You allow it to continue. We cannot police every word spoken within these walls, Dumbledore began. You don't even try, Arthur interrupted. Bullying is rampant throughout this school, and professors turn a blind eye. When Harry Potter himself, the boy who lived, can be openly tormented by a significant portion of the student body, something is really wrong with the school discipline. With magic, bullying can reach dangerous levels, something you must know from the reports of victims in the hospital wing. Just because magic can heal physical injuries easily doesn't make it a small matter. The Sorting Hat shifted on its shelf, as if uncomfortable with the conversation's direction. You might have justifications for that failing as well, Arthur continued relentlessly. So let's discuss your staff appointments, shall we? Professor Snape, while undeniably knowledgeable about potions, is a terrible teacher. More than half of the school hates him, and he openly despises them in return, reason enough for dismissal at any reasonable institution. Just because he was your spy in the last war and you might need him again, you cannot force him on the students. There are lasting consequences of this. Just check the number of new healers and aurors taking up posts after he started teaching potions. Dumbledore looked a little guilty. I'll spare us both the discussion of Binns and Trelawney, Arthur pressed on. But the defense position? In so many years, you've not managed to solve that curse? You're widely acknowledged as one of the most powerful wizards alive, headmaster, but you're not infallible. There's no shame in requesting assistance from curse-breaking specialists, even if it means granting outsiders limited access to Hogwarts. I'm sure no one can really play games under your close watch. The current situation suggests preparing students for their futures simply isn't your priority. The Sorting Hat unexpectedly chimed in, he makes valid points, Albus. Seeking help has never diminished greatness or makes you look weak. Dumbledore shot the Hat a look of mild betrayal before returning his attention to Arthur. Is there more to this comprehensive critique? Actually, yes, Arthur replied. Not concerning the school or wizarding world as a whole, but I have noticed some things about a certain boy who lived and the events surrounding him. Would you prefer I continue, or have we reached the limits of your tolerance for honest feedback? Dumbledore's expression grew solemn, but he made no move to end the conversation. Taking this as tacit permission, Arthur continued. Let's begin from the start again. Everyone knows you arranged his care after his parents died. Yet from first sight, anyone could tell he was neglected, if not abused by his caretakers. The supposed savior of the wizarding world didn't even have decent clothes that fit him. Hardly the golden childhood depicted in those adventures of Harry Potter books. He might not have had a good life. At least he is safe. The place where he is at gives him the best protections from those who wish to harm him. Dumbledore replied, his voice carefully measured. It's hard to believe that there were no other possible options. Arthur countered. However, you don't need to explain to me. I am a nobody. Just be ready to explain to his parents in the afterlife. A heavy silence descended upon the office, broken only by the soft whirring of silver instruments. Since we're being brutally honest, Arthur continued after a moment, shall we discuss the series of tests you have planned for Harry over the past several years? What tests? Dumbledore's expression remained neutral, though his eyes had lost their characteristic twinkle. Please, Headmaster. So hiding the Philosopher's Stone in the castle and the obstacle course was not a test? That you did not use the stone to attract whoever was possessing Professor Quirrell to the school? Then second year, you had no idea there was a basilisk roaming around in the castle, much less the dark artifact possessing young Miss Weasley? Were you deliberately clueless, or has age finally gotten to you? You claim knowledge of all these events, yet took no action. Dumbledore challenged, a hint of steel entering his voice. Not my responsibility, Arthur replied with indifference. Your inaction made it abundantly clear these situations were developing according to your design. I saw no reason to interfere with your grand scheme, particularly when doing so would only bring unwanted attention to myself. Self-preservation is my primary motivation after all. I see. Dumbledore's tone conveyed deep disappointment. I doubt that very much, Arthur responded. Moving on to his third year. While Sirius Black's escape might have disrupted your original plans, the subsequent developments raise further questions. You couldn't prevent the Ministry from surrounding a school of children with soul-devouring dementors? A unified front of outraged parents, regardless of their political alignments, could have forced Fudge to reconsider. Then there's the Time Turner adventure and Black's dramatic rescue. You couldn't have arranged a proper trial for an innocent man? The chief warlock of the Wizengamot surely possesses such authority. How can you know all this? Dumbledore demanded. You know, nothing to do and all. When I feel bored, I just grab some snacks and secretly follow the Golden Trio on their adventures. It's so much fun. Like watching a movie. The Sorting Hat chuckled. I'm sure it was exciting. Next time take me along, will you? Now there's a thought, Arthur agreed. Though I suspect this year's finale will be the last performance I can watch. Speaking of which, Headmaster, do you really want Voldemort to be resurrected? What? Dumbledore looked startled. So you don't know Professor Moody is an imposter? Arthur pressed. And his task is to kidnap Harry and use some ritual to resurrect his master. Dumbledore's composure faltered visibly, shock flashing across his face before he could mask it. How could you possibly know? Ah. Arthur nodded slowly. So you are aware. Poor Harry. Whole life being played around by someone he trusts above all others. Dumbledore sighed deeply, suddenly looking every one of his considerable years. I have my reasons for these difficult decisions. Voldemort will inevitably return whether I wish it or not. I would prefer that return occur while I remain able to guide Harry through what must follow. There are forces at work beyond your understanding, Mr. Hayes. Your justifications don't particularly interest me, Arthur replied with a dismissive wave. These are my final days in the wizarding world. After the tournament concludes, I'll be gone. I simply hope your elaborate schemes ultimately succeed and Harry emerges from them reasonably intact, both physically and mentally. May I go now? No. Dumbledore's tone hardened. You were summoned here for a specific purpose before you rather skillfully diverted our conversation. Arthur sighed. His saying all this was to make Dumbledore forget about interrogating him. Maybe there was also the fact about indulging in a bit of long-restrained ranting, but the former was the main goal. Ah yes, my injuries, Arthur shrugged. I had an unfortunate incident with powerful magic. But as you can see, I've made a complete recovery. I require considerably more detail than that, Dumbledore insisted. Specifically what occurred and where exactly you disappeared to for 3 days. Arthur considered his options briefly. I propose an exchange. If you tell me details why you have planned all these things around Harry, I will tell you about my adventure. I promise both are on the same level. Otherwise, just as you maintain your secrets, I'll retain mine. We can both happily continue with our lives. Arthur was happy he was still a Triwizard champion. It meant Dumbledore could not force him in any way without consequences. Things are not so simple, Dumbledore said. I am aware of your ambitions in the Muggle world, but when you venture outside the wizarding world, there are some rules you must follow. Arthur raised an eyebrow. You're referring to the Covenant. You know of it. Surprise colored Dumbledore's voice. It was mentioned by someone, but I know little about it. There's nothing in the Hogwarts library. Dumbledore sighed, reaching for a slim volume bound in blue leather. The Covenant was established after the chaos of Grindelwald's War. The Statute of Secrecy was compromised, and Muggles with their advanced technology gained ways of monitoring that we could not fully counteract with memory charms. This created a dangerous situation. What happened? Arthur asked, with genuine curiosity, to learn the magical side of things. Fury had told him the Muggles' perspective. Some Muggles began experimenting, trying to gain magic for themselves, Dumbledore continued. This nearly led to open war. The ICW chose restraint initially, allowing Muggle authorities time to address these violations internally. But then came the Obscurials incident. Obscurials? How many? Dumbledore replied, too many. The incident united the wizarding communities worldwide like never before. For perhaps the only time in our fragmented history, magical governments stood united, prepared for war if strict measures weren't implemented immediately. And the Muggles backed down. They had little choice. Their weapons might destroy cities, but they had no effective defense against wizards who could strike anywhere and disappear instantly. After intense negotiations, the Covenant was established. Heavily favoring wizarding interests, I'd imagine, Arthur observed. Naturally. We presented a united front while they remained divided by their own internal conflicts. Dumbledore took the blue book, tapped it with his wand to create a duplicate, and handed the copy to Arthur. The full terms are here, but in essence, Muggles agreed to maintain the Statute of Secrecy and actively assist in concealing our existence, refrain from recruiting wizards and training them to fight against us, avoid any involvement in wizarding affairs, and most critically, cease all experimentation on magical individuals. And what concessions did wizards make in return? We agreed not to interfere in Muggle governance. No wizards may become political leaders or figures of significant influence in Muggle society. We cannot use magic against prominent Muggles unless directly threatened, and we must remain neutral in their conflicts and wars. What about dark wizards who target Muggles? Arthur asked. That responsibility falls to our Aurors. If they fail, the ICW intervenes. Under no circumstances can Muggles judge a witch or wizard, and the same applies in reverse. When Muggles violate the Covenant, Muggle authorities handle it according to their own laws. Should they fail to do so, the original agreement is considered broken and it is time for war. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. And what of Muggleborns who leave the wizarding world seeking better opportunities? They face limited options, Dumbledore admitted. They may live ordinary, unremarkable Muggle lives, or relocate to another wizarding community with more progressive attitudes. I genuinely pity Muggleborns in Britain then, Arthur remarked. No promising future here, and vital information like this Covenant deliberately withheld from them. What happens if someone unknowingly rises to political prominence, becomes a member of Parliament, for instance? People monitoring will identify them and issue warnings. And if they disregard those warnings? The path to Parliament isn't easy. They will not be willing to give everything up for a world that left them with no choice than to leave. We inform specific Muggle authorities about their magical background, Dumbledore explained. They employ various methods to remove the individual from power: political scandals, business failures, and occasionally more aggressive approaches. What if he decided to fight back using magic? The wizarding world would provide no assistance whatsoever. Beyond restrictions against torture and experimentation, Muggle authorities would be permitted to respond with whatever force they deemed necessary. So the situation isn't entirely hopeless, Arthur mused, turning the book over in his hands. You still intend to pursue your original course? Dumbledore asked, studying him intently. I'm not foolish enough to charge ahead blindly, Arthur replied. Just as with the Triwizard Tournament, I'll examine the rules exhaustively and identify exploitable loopholes. Besides, I've observed that when one possesses sufficient power, rules have a curious tendency to become more flexible. I wish you success in your endeavors, Mr. Hayes. Likewise. May your convoluted plans for Harry and Voldemort achieve their intended outcomes. Arthur rose from his chair. Rest assured I won't interfere with whatever scheme the false Moody has prepared for the third task. I hope Potter survives his inevitable confrontation with the newly resurrected Dark Lord. He will, Dumbledore stated with absolute conviction. Fate stands with him and he also has certain unique protection that will help him. Before you leave, Mr. Hayes, be careful. Your current inability to use magic makes you vulnerable, both within these walls and beyond them. Arthur paused at the door, a slight smile playing across his lips. I appreciate your concern, Headmaster, but I'll manage perfectly well. Contrary to popular belief, my reputation was never built solely on spellcasting ability. Good day. As the spiral staircase carried him downward, Arthur considered what he'd learned. The Covenant's restrictions didn't particularly trouble him. It did not put any dent in his future plans to involve himself in the Marvel world. However, he needed to ensure he learned everything possible from the wizarding world before potentially crossing that line. The way forward was increasingly complex, but then again, he'd always excelled at exploiting the rules. Chapter 55, Metamorphosis. After that conversation with Dumbledore, Arthur was in no mood to return to the Slytherin dormitory or rest. His mind buzzed with too many thoughts, demanding action rather than reflection. The Great Lake beckoned its vast expanse of water offering both solitude and space for experimentation. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grounds as he walked. As he crossed the grounds, whispers followed him like persistent shadows. There he goes, Hayes can't use magic anymore. Got the news from St. Mungo's. Arthur's lips twitched with dark amusement. The Hogwarts rumor mill remained impressively efficient. His magical difficulties had somehow become common knowledge mere hours after his return. This unwelcome development would inevitably bring trouble from his enemies. The question was whether to hide until he recovered or face challenges directly. Arthur had no misplaced pride about strategic retreats when necessary. The experiments he planned would help him decide. The afternoon sun cast golden ripples across the lake's surface as he reached his destination. Arthur chose a secluded spot where the forbidden forest nearly touched the shoreline, creating a natural blind spot from castle windows. A massive oak with gnarled roots provided the perfect natural workbench. Arthur set down his small bag and unpacked his tools, a leather-bound notebook, his own wand, a spare wand borrowed from the Room of Requirement, and a silver artifact that resembled a cross between a compass and pocket watch. Right then, he muttered, rolling up his sleeves. Let's see what we're dealing with. First order of business, assess the physical changes. While he wasn't certain what effects the Tesseract and Space Stone exposure might have had, he knew the healing ritual had certainly enhanced his body. He now needed precise measurements. Arthur started with basic strength tests. Push UPS, 50 completed without breaking a sweat. Pull UPS on a low-hanging branch, 30 with minimal strain. A sprint along the shoreline, barely winded. Not bad, he noted, jotting observations in his notebook and comparing them to his previous capabilities. Definitely improved. Next came reflex testing. He tossed pebbles into the air, catching them before they fell. First simple tosses, then behind his back, then with his eyes closed, then multiple stones simultaneously. His success rate was nearly perfect each time. Arthur paused, sensing something else had changed. His hearing seemed sharper, he could detect birds rustling in distant trees. His vision had improved, details on the opposite shore appeared with unexpected clarity. Even his sense of smell had heightened, the loamy earth beneath his feet, the algae at the lake's edge, the faint trace of smoke from Hagrid's chimney all registered distinctly. Fascinating, he whispered, documenting everything. The ritual had genuinely transformed him physically. Not dramatically enough to draw immediate attention, but significantly nonetheless. His body felt completely rebuilt, optimized like a finely tuned machine. Not superhuman, but perhaps the peak of natural human capability. Approximately 1.5 times previous capabilities, he wrote in his notebook. Complete healing of all previous injuries, including microtrauma from years of training. He couldn't verify that last part himself, but what healer Cadwallader said and the absence of familiar aches and pains spoke volumes. Every scar, every slightly misaligned bone from childhood injuries all erased as if they'd never existed. The enhancement wasn't as dramatic as what the super soldier serum had given Captain America, but Arthur felt satisfied nonetheless. Money well spent. Now for the critical assessment, his magic. Arthur picked up the borrowed wand first, having already confirmed his own produced no response. The spare was nothing special, likely abandoned by some student decades ago, but any functional wand should produce at least minimal effects. Lumos, he commanded clearly. Nothing. Not even the faintest glimmer. Wingardium Leviosa. He directed the wand at a small stone with precise movements. It remained stubbornly earthbound. One by one, Arthur progressed through every first-year spell, then second year, then more advanced magic. No response whatsoever. The wand might as well have been an ordinary twig plucked from the forest floor. Wonderful, he muttered, tossing it aside in frustration. Time for deeper investigation. Arthur placed the silver instrument on his palm, closed his eyes, and slipped into meditation. This magical core visualization technique required both the artifact and considerable concentration, but it was currently his best diagnostic tool. Colors bloomed behind his eyelids as he sank deeper into the trance. There his magical core came into focus, but not as he remembered. Previously, his core had resembled a white sphere pulsing with warm energy. Now it appeared as a swirling vortex of deep blue, shot through with threads of cosmic purple. Larger and more powerful, yes, but fundamentally altered in its nature. The space stone had changed his magic at its most basic level. Arthur would have been thrilled at this development if not for the complications that came along with it. While maintaining his meditative state, Arthur attempted to access this transformed core. To his surprise, he could reach it easily enough, but as the magic tried to flow outward, it encountered resistance. The problem wasn't with his core but with his magical pathways, the channels through which magic flowed from core to extremities. These pathways hadn't evolved alongside his transformed core. Though somewhat strengthened by the ritual, they remained fundamentally incompatible with his new, transformed magic. His current magic was simply too powerful for his existing channels. Arthur considered the solution: precisely control his magic, allowing only tiny amounts to flow through the pathways. Continue this practice until the pathways naturally strengthened and expanded. Eventually, full function would return. It was similar to how young wizards learned magic. They began with wands that helped control magical flow, and after years of practice, their pathways developed to the point where some could perform wandless magic given they tried and trained for it. But theory and practice were vastly different challenges. A child's magical core was small, making control relatively simple. For Arthur, with the core now potentially rivaling Dumbledore's in size, the challenge would be exponentially more difficult. He attempted to regulate his magic, visualizing a thin trickle rather than the natural flood. Failure. He tried again with a different approach. Another failure. Again and again, with minimal progress. At this rate, regaining even basic spell-casting ability might take months, perhaps years. Growing increasingly frustrated, Arthur retrieved Ravenclaw's diadem from his bag and tried again. The results improved. Time estimates shortened from years to months, but still far longer than he'd hoped. If only I had a compatible wand, he muttered, eyeing the useless pieces of wood beside him. Standard wands couldn't interface with his altered magical signature. He needed something custom-crafted specifically for his unique core. And exactly how am I supposed to arrange that? Arthur asked the empty air. Not exactly something Ollivander advertises in his shop window, is it? Special wands for wizards who've been fundamentally altered by cosmic artifacts inquire within. Obtaining even a standard second wand required ministry permission, unlikely given his reputation. Foreign wand makers might offer possibilities, but finding one skilled enough to work with his unique situation presented additional challenges. For the immediate future, wandless magic remained his only viable path. He would need to focus exclusively on regaining control. Yet even success would only restore basic functionality. Accessing his full potential would require additional interventions. Simple practice wouldn't suffice. He needed external assistance. Arthur dug through his memories of the Marvel Universe. There were multiple paths to enhancing the human body. Arthur first eliminated all the methods that relied heavily on luck. It left him with fewer options. Chi manipulation, like the masters of Kunlun and Ta Lo practiced, Wakanda's heart-shaped herb. These were the methods he could think of currently, but there might be other ways. Maybe the Ancient One and the sorcerers at Camartage would know more. If all else failed, he could ask Carol for help and use Kree technology to transfuse some Kree blood into his system. But that would be his last option. Unless absolutely necessary, he didn't want to play around with blood and genes. Fortunately, time was on his side. The major MCU events were years away. He could develop his approach methodically. The more immediate challenge was the third task of the Triwizard Tournament. Without magic, navigating the maze's obstacles would be tricky, especially since he couldn't bring weapons inside. Whatever Hagrid had prepared wouldn't be simple to overcome with physical abilities alone. Add Barty Crouch Jr.'s interference to ensure Harry reached the cup first, and the situation became truly complicated. Despite these challenges, Arthur found his mood improving as he packed away his supplies. The situation wasn't hopeless, just extremely difficult. He had identified potential solutions, even if they weren't ideal. Nothing worth having ever came easily, after all. With renewed determination, Arthur began walking back toward the castle. Physical enhancements would have to compensate for magical limitations in the upcoming task. He'd overcome greater obstacles before. As he approached the massive entrance doors, Arthur suddenly froze mid-step. His newly enhanced senses detected something unusual: the subtle shifting of weight, controlled breathing, the faint rustle of fabric against stone. Someone was hiding in the shadows beside the doorway, waiting. Watching. For him. Chapter 56, Old Enemies, New Strength. Arthur froze mid-step as his newly enhanced senses detected movement in the shadows near the castle doors. Someone was watching, waiting. His muscles tensed as he weighed his options. Confront the observer? Take a different entrance? The presence vanished before he could decide, slipping away into the castle. Arthur frowned, his enhanced hearing catching the faint sound of hurried footsteps receding down a corridor. Someone had been monitoring his return, but why? He shook off his concern and entered the castle. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the high windows as students made their way to the Great Hall for dinner. While Arthur should have joined them, he wanted to drop by his dormitory first. Taking a shortcut through a seldom used courtyard, he passed beneath a crumbling stone archway covered in dormant ivy. The sound reached him first: hushed voices just around the corner, their tone unmistakably conspiratorial. Definitely can't use magic. Pomfret took him to St. Mungo's. Are you certain? Haze is slippery. My cousin works there. Said his magical core is damaged beyond repair. Perfect chance then. Everyone's here. All 20. Everyone was waiting for this. Arthur slowed his pace, considering his options. He could easily go back and avoid the confrontation entirely. But then again, he really wanted to test his enhanced strength. This would provide an opportunity to assess his new capabilities while sending a clear message that, magic or not, he remained dangerous. The voices fell silent as he rounded the corner. They waited in a loose semicircle that nearly spanned the width of the courtyard. 20 students, a mix of houses and schools, from 5th to 7th years. Arthur recognized most of them. Enemies he'd made over the years. Most were faces he'd taught a lesson to on the day of the Triwizard Champion selection. Roll and his Slytherin cronies, several Ravenclaws, and a handful of Durmstrang and Beauxbatons students. Old enemies, gathered together with fresh purpose. Haze, Roll stepped forward with a predatory smile. Just the mood-blood we were hoping to see. Arthur didn't bother responding. His gaze swept the group, cataloging their positions, noting which hands were already gripping wands. We heard the most interesting rumor, Roll continued, twirling his wand between his fingers. Something about you losing your magic. Quite the handicap before the final task, wouldn't you say? The Ravenclaw 7th year, Belby, laughed. Haze the Hexer, unable to cast a single spell. How tragic. Nothing to say. One of the Durmstrang boys taunted. No clever curse this time. Arthur assessed the situation with cold precision. 20 opponents. All armed with wands. All positioned to block his exit. All clearly intent on humiliation at minimum, injury at worst. Talking would accomplish nothing. Escape was impractical. That left one option. He moved. The first strike caught Roll completely off guard, a palm heel to the sternum that sent him staggering backward, wheezing for breath. Before the others could react, Arthur had already pivoted, sweeping the legs from beneath the nearest Durmstrang student. Diffindo! Belby shouted, his wand slashing through the air. Arthur's enhanced reflexes saved him as he ducked, the cutting charm sizzling over his head and slicing a deep gash into the stone wall behind him. These weren't schoolyard hexes, they were going for serious harm. Conf Ringo. Aussies F Ringo. Lacero. Spells erupted from multiple directions. Arthur yanked Belby in front of him as a human shield. The bone-breaking curse hit the Ravenclaw directly in the chest. Arthur heard ribs crack as he shoved the gasping student into the path of another's blasting curse. The explosion sent 3 attackers tumbling backward, their robes smoking and torn. Take him down! Someone shouted, panic edging into their voice. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Jets of sickly purple and orange light crisscrossed the space, chipping stone and scorching walls. Arthur dove behind a column, feeling it shudder as a curse impacted the other side, sending stone fragments spraying across the floor. "Spread out! Surround him!" shouted a seventh-year Slytherin. Arthur seized a jagged piece of broken stone, hefting it in his palm. As a Durmstrang student edged around the column, Arthur hurled the improvised weapon with precision. It struck the boy's shoulder with a crack, sending his wand flying from suddenly nerveless fingers. The Durmstrang student collapsed, clutching his dislocated shoulder. "Alexei's down. Use fire. Flush him out. Ignis Vorego." The incantation echoed across the courtyard. Intense magical flames erupted, not quite fiend fire but still dangerously aggressive. Arthur's eyes narrowed. These students were escalating beyond simple revenge. He sprinted toward the fountain, leaping over the decorative rim as the magical fire pursued him. Landing in the shallow water, he grabbed the central stone statue, a mermaid holding a trident, and with his enhanced strength, wrenched it free from its moorings. Water gushed upward where pipes had broken, dousing the nearest flames. Arthur swung the stone trident like a staff, catching a Beau's baton student across the chest. The boy flew backward, the air knocked from his lungs, colliding with two others. Avada began a Slytherin 7th year. Arthur hurled the statue's severed head before the killing curse could be completed. It struck the student's shoulder, disrupting his aim. The curse discharged into the ceiling, bringing down chunks of stone that forced several attackers to scatter. He nearly killed Saul. Someone shouted. "Form a circle. Shields up." 10 remaining attackers formed a defensive ring, wands pointed outward. Their faces showed naked fear now, shield charms shimmering around them. Arthur stalked the perimeter, looking for weakness. His breath remained steady, his movements fluid and precise. Blood, none of it has spattered his robes. Crucio. 2 students cast simultaneously, their curses converging where Arthur had stood a heartbeat before. He had already moved, anticipating their attack. The combined unforgivable struck a third student who had shifted position at exactly the wrong moment. The boy's body contorted, his scream piercing the air before he collapsed, twitching. "You idiots!" Roll bellowed. "Coordinate your..." Arthur struck like lightning. He had circled behind them, using the fountain spray as cover. His fist connected with Roll's kidney with enough force to drop him instantly. Arthur grabbed him by the collar, using him as a battering ram to disrupt the defensive circle. Bodies collided. Shield charms faltered. Arthur seized a fallen wand and snapped it, the magical backlash creating a flash that temporarily blinded several students. "My eyes! I can't see!" A Durmstrang student cast wildly in his panic. Flagranti. The burning curse meant for Arthur struck his friend instead. The victim's robes ignited with painful flames. His yells pierced the air as he ran blindly, crashing into others, causing further confusion. Arthur grabbed a length of decorative chain from a nearby wall sconce and swung it in a wide arc. The heavy metal caught 3 students across their backs and legs, sending them sprawling to the ground with pained cries. The survivors' formation had completely collapsed. They were stumbling over each other, firing curses randomly, some hitting their own allies. One Ravenclaw cast a flame-freezing charm on his burning friend, only to be hit from behind by a jelly-legs jinx intended for Arthur. He collapsed in an undignified heap, unable to stand. "Retreat!" someone called. "Get out!" Arthur silenced him with a precisely aimed stone that struck his wand hand. The boy dropped his wand, clutching his bruised fingers. 3 opponents remained, Roll and 2 Durmstrang students, all sporting various injuries, backing toward the exit. "What are you?" one of them whispered, voice trembling. Arthur approached steadily, his movements predatory, unhurried. His clothes were splattered with water and dust, but he himself remained untouched. Not a single spell had landed. "Last chance to walk away," he offered, his voice unnervingly calm. "Avada Kedavra!" Roll screamed, desperation in his eyes. Arthur was on him before the green light could fully form, fingers crushing the boy's wrist with enough force to make him drop his wand with a howl of pain. The half-formed killing curse fizzled harmlessly into the ground. The remaining 2 attackers fell seconds later, their heads knocked together with enough force to render them instantly unconscious. Around him lay the aftermath of the battle. 20 students sprawled across the courtyard in various states of injury, bruises, minor burns, sprains, and a few broken bones. Blood smeared the flagstones from split lips and noses, mixing with water from the destroyed fountain. Arthur stood in their midst, breathing evenly. Not a scratch on him. Roll struggled to stand, cradling his wrist. You'll pay for this, Hayes. I doubt that. Arthur straightened his robes calmly. But please, feel free to bring more friends next time. This was hardly challenging. Though remember, next time, I won't be so restrained. The courtyard fell silent except for the pained groans of his would-be attackers. Arthur stepped carefully around their defeated forms, continuing toward the dormitory as if he'd merely taken a stroll through the gardens. Inside the castle, he paused in an empty corridor, examining himself. His breathing had already returned to normal. The brief exertion from the fight hadn't taxed his enhanced body in the slightest. A splash of water on his sleeve, a smudge of dust on his shoulder, these were the only signs he'd been in combat at all. This new body was efficient beyond anything he could have expected. Combined with his years of self-trained martial arts, it made him dangerous even without magic. Not enough to face elite wizards or agents like Fury, certainly, but more than adequate for handling schoolyard bullies. A small victory, but one that provided valuable data. He now had empirical proof of his enhanced capabilities in combat situations. The reaction times, the strength, the durability all significantly improved. As Arthur walked toward the Slytherin dormitories, he knew word of this encounter would spread quickly. By dinner, everyone would know that Hayes the Hexer had defeated 20 opponents without casting a single spell. They'd called him dangerous before, when they thought he was just extraordinarily skilled with curses and dabbled in Muggle fighting techniques. How would they label him now? Arthur turned the final corner toward the dungeon entrance and stopped short. Professor Snape stood before the stone wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Mr. Hayes," Snape said softly. "I've just received some rather interesting reports about an altercation in the East Courtyard. Would you happen to know anything about that?" Behind his carefully neutral expression, Arthur sighed internally. It seemed his demonstration had attracted attention faster than anticipated. "Self-defense, Professor," he replied evenly. "Nothing more." Snape's dark eyes studied him with uncomfortable intensity. 20 students requiring medical attention, and not a mark on you. Rather unusual odds for self-defense, wouldn't you say? "They ambushed me," I responded appropriately. "Nothing new, Professor. Without magic, it is new." Snape's voice dropped even lower. "How very resourceful of you. Is there a problem, Professor?" Arthur kept his tone respectful but firm. "I hope for your well-being you know how to hide after Hogwarts," Snape said, his words barely above a whisper. "You will be hunted down in huge numbers, and with your current condition, you won't stand a chance. Your opponents will be nothing like school bullies." "Well, let them come." Arthur met Snape's gaze steadily. "I have a few weapons I'm waiting to test out. Lethal ones which cannot be used on students." He paused, then added quietly, "I hope you don't join the party, Professor. I truly hope you can find your freedom and get away from everything. The wizarding world badly needs innovative people like you." Snape's expression flickered with something unreadable before he turned and swept away without another word. Something Arthur had said had struck a nerve. As Arthur watched Snape's retreating form, he realized the potion's master had not given any punishment. A curious detail to file away for later consideration. For now, he had other concerns. The third task was approaching rapidly, and his display today, while satisfying, had revealed both strengths and limitations. His enhanced physical abilities were impressive, but would they be enough against the magical creatures and obstacles Hagrid had undoubtedly prepared for the maze, especially when he could not carry any weapons with him? Arthur entered the Slytherin common room, ignoring the sudden silence and stares that greeted him. News travelled fast in Hogwarts. Even faster when it involved violence. Let them stare. Let them whisper. Fear had its uses, after all. Chapter 57, The Final Countdown. The last few days before the third task passed in a blur of training, experimentation, and frustration. Each morning, Arthur rose before dawn to practice controlling his magic, attempting to channel the smallest possible amount through his magical pathways. Each night, he collapsed into bed, mentally exhausted with virtually nothing to show for his efforts. Progress was agonizingly slow. While he had expected this, the prospect of continuing for months without tangible results was both discouraging and infuriating. Still, he had no choice but to persist. There was no alternative path to recovery. In his quieter moments, Arthur reminded himself that this outcome was far better than expected. He had fully anticipated death when he decided to use the Tesseract to protect Earth from Ronan's fleet. Instead, he'd emerged with a vastly enhanced magical core. The temporary inability to access it seemed a fair trade. Fair, but still immensely frustrating. The days, however, weren't without drama. Arthur had been in the astronomy tower when a house elf appeared with a summons to the headmaster's office. The creature vanished with a crack before Arthur could ask questions. When he arrived, the circular office was unusually crowded. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Professor Snape stood by the window, face impassive as stone. Occupying the remaining space were a dozen adults in expensive robes, their faces flushed with indignation. The parents of the bullies had arrived. "There he is." A sharp-featured woman pointed a trembling finger. "The violent mudblood who attacked our children. My son will need specialized healing for weeks." Arthur recognized Mrs. Roll immediately from her son's identical sneer. He swept his gaze across the assembled purebloods, noting familiar features reflected in their offspring. 20 against 1 hardly constitutes an attack on my part, Arthur observed coolly, taking the only empty seat without invitation. "How dare you?" A portly man with Belby's prominent nose sputtered. "You broke my son's ribs." After he attempted to slice me in half with a curse, Arthur countered, his tone conversational. "A rather nasty dark-cutting curse, if I recall correctly. Where would a student learn such a spell, I wonder?" The man's complexion shifted from red to purple. "Preposterous!" Another parent shouted. "Our children would never." "I'm perfectly prepared to face trial," Arthur interrupted, keeping his voice calm and measured. "But I should warn you, your children will be seated right beside me in the defendant's box." The room fell silent. "What precisely do you mean by that, Mr. Hayes?" Dumbledore asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew. "Simply that during our encounter, multiple students cast unforgivable curses. The Cruciatus, specifically, and a few killing curses." Arthur's gaze swept the room. "While I might face charges for excessive self-defense, your children will be facing mandatory sentences in Azkaban. No exceptions, no mitigating circumstances." He smiled thinly. "The use of an unforgivable carries an automatic life sentence. Even for purebloods." "You're lying," Mrs. Roll hissed, though uncertainty had crept into her expression. "Am I?" Arthur raised an eyebrow. "I will surely provide my memory of the events to the Aurors. Beyond that, prior incantato can be performed on their wands. The evidence should be rather conclusive." "He's bluffing," Mr. Roll insisted, turning to Dumbledore. "Headmaster, surely you won't allow this criminal to threaten respectable families." Dumbledore's expression remained neutral. "I cannot control the application of ministry law, Mr. Roll. If unforgivables were indeed cast, the consequences are quite clear." Arthur stood, brushing an imaginary speck from his robes. "I'll be awaiting your decision on how to proceed. If you wish to involve the Aurors, I'll cooperate fully provided all parties are ready to face the appropriate legal consequences." He nodded politely to Dumbledore and Snape. "Unless there's anything else, professors, I should return to my preparation for the tournament." Without waiting for a response, he left the office as calmly as he'd entered, leaving behind a room of stunned and frustrated purebloods. Arthur couldn't deny the satisfaction he felt at turning their own system against them. No charges were filed. June 24 arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, gentle breeze, and comfortable temperatures. Nature itself seemed determined to provide ideal conditions for the final Triwizard Challenge. Arthur stood at the edge of the Quidditch pitch, now transformed beyond recognition. Where the familiar playing field had once been, a massive hedge maze now stretched, 20-foot walls of dense foliage blocking all view of what lay within. The twilight sky cast long shadows across the structure, giving it an ominous appearance. Around the maze, stands had been erected for spectators. The entire school had turned out, along with visitors from Hogsmeade, ministry officials, and reporters. The air buzzed with excitement and speculation. Ludo Bagman's magically amplified voice boomed across the grounds. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third and final task of the Triwizard Tournament." The crowd erupted in cheers. Arthur remained stoic, mentally reviewing his strategy one last time. Inside this maze, Bagman continued, the Triwizard Cup awaits at the center. The first champion to touch the cup will receive full marks and be declared the tournament winner. More cheering. Arthur scanned the judges' table. Dumbledore sat calmly, his half-moon spectacles reflecting the torchlight. Madame Maxime towered beside him, while Karkaroff looked unusually tense. Cornelius Fudge had replaced the still missing Barty Crouch Sr., looking important in an ostentatious purple bowler hat. Now, our champions will enter the maze according to their current standings. In first place, with 89 points, Mr. Arthur Hayes will enter first. Polite applause mixed with some hisses and boos. In second place, with 85 points, Mr. Harry Potter. Significantly more enthusiastic cheering, particularly from the Gryffindor section. In third place, with 80 points, Mr. Victor Crumb. The Durmstrang contingent stomped and shouted their approval. And in fourth place, with 57 points, Miss Fleur Delacour. The Beaux Batons students applauded gracefully, several releasing enchanted butterflies from their wands. Bagman beckoned the champions forward for final instructions. As they gathered, he dropped his jovial manner slightly. Inside the maze, you'll face obstacles, magical creatures, enchantments, and the maze itself, which changes. A hint of theatrical mystery entered his voice at the last word. The hedges aren't static. They move. Paths that exist one moment may be gone the next. If you find yourself in serious danger, send red sparks into the air. Our patrollers will retrieve you immediately, though this will, of course, mean your withdrawal from the task. He paused, surveying each champion. Mr. Hayes, Bagman continued, his tone shifting to something almost cheerful, I've been informed about your condition, and I suggest you take one step in and then come out. That way, you won't violate the tournament rules and can safely withdraw. Without magic, you simply won't survive the maze, and if you encounter any dangerous situation, you won't be able to call for help. Arthur noted the barely suppressed glee in Bagman's voice. The man had for sure placed a substantial wager with the goblins on Harry winning a bet that had seemed doomed when Arthur consistently outperformed Potter in previous tasks. News of Arthur's magical incapacity had clearly revitalized Bagman's hopes. No need to worry about me, Arthur replied evenly. I'll manage. Arthur, you really can't use magic at all? Harry asked, concern evident in his voice. Not at present, Arthur confirmed. Core damage takes a long time to heal. Crumb's expression remained unreadable. Fleur looked sympathetic. That is horrible timing, she murmured. Perhaps you should listen to Monsieur Bagman. I'll be fine, Arthur insisted. Well, that was just a suggestion, Bagman said with an exaggerated shrug. I've heard about your recent accomplishments even without magic. However, I must remind you, you may not bring any weapons into the maze except your wand. Professor Moody will perform a final check before your entry. Understood, Arthur said. The fake Moody stumped forward, his magical eye swiveling wildly. One by one, he scanned the champions with unusual thoroughness. When he reached Arthur, his inspection was particularly meticulous. His magical eye seemed to X-ray Arthur's clothing and body, searching for any hidden advantage. Clean, he finally grunted, sounding almost disappointed. Arthur suppressed a smile. The impostor clearly wanted to ensure his plans would work perfectly today. Without magic, Arthur would be an easy obstacle to eliminate, leaving Harry with a clear path to the cup. Though Arthur really planned to let Harry reach the cup first, the smug expressions on Bagman's and Moody's faces made him alter his plan a little bit. He would now attempt to reach the cup first himself if only to give them a proper scare. Champions, take your positions. Bagman called. Arthur moved to the maze entrance. Behind him, Harry gave a nervous thumbs up. On my whistle, Mr. Hayes. Bagman called. 3, 2, 1. The whistle sounded, shrill and final. Arthur stepped into the maze. Chapter 58, The Maze. The hedges closed behind Arthur immediately, cutting off the sounds of the crowd. The sudden silence was unnerving. Ahead stretched a single path that soon split into a fork. Left or right? Arthur chose left, moving cautiously. Without magic, his options were severely limited. He couldn't blast through obstacles, transfigure anything useful, or defend against magical attacks. All he had were his enhanced physical abilities and his wits. The maze felt alive. Branches shifted slightly even without wind. Leaves rustled as though whispering secrets to one another. 20 paces in, Arthur already knew that navigating the maze wouldn't be easy. A second whistle pierced the air. Harry had entered. Arthur picked up his pace. The path twisted and turned, occasionally branching. He maintained his bearings with careful attention to the position of Hogwarts Castle, visible in glimpses above the towering hedges. The real challenge wasn't navigation, it was the constant, subtle shifting of the maze itself. Twice he found promising paths that suddenly dead-ended as the hedges silently merged together, forcing him to backtrack. A third whistle sounded. Crumb was now in the maze. Arthur rounded a corner and froze. Ahead, filling the entire path, crouched a massive acromantula. Its 8 eyes gleamed in the twilight, mandibles clicking in hungry anticipation. "Bloody perfect," Arthur muttered. The spider lunged. Arthur dove to one side, rolling beneath its reaching legs. The acromantula skittered around, surprisingly agile for its size, and charged again. This time, Arthur stood his ground until the last moment, then jumped aside. The giant spider, unable to arrest its momentum, crashed into the hedge wall. Its legs became entangled in the dense foliage, temporarily trapping it. Arthur seized the opportunity. He grabbed one of the spider's front legs and, with his enhanced strength, twisted sharply. The limb snapped with a sickening crack. The acromantula shrieked a high, chittering sound that sent chills down Arthur's spine. Before it could free itself, Arthur wrenched off a second leg. The creature thrashed wildly, but its position only drove it deeper into the hedge. Using the broken leg like a spear, Arthur delivered a precise strike through the acromantula's head. The creature shuddered violently, then went still. Arthur examined his impromptu weapons. 2 acromantula legs, each about 5 feet long, with sharp, chitinous points. Not ideal, but better than nothing. The final whistle blew. Fleur had entered. Arthur continued deeper into the maze, one spider leg held like a staff, the other secured across his back. The path narrowed as he advanced, the hedges growing closer until they brushed his shoulders from both sides. Suddenly, the air grew thick with a golden mist that shimmered with unnatural light. Recognizing what it was, Arthur walked into it without hesitation. The world turned upside down. Literally. Arthur found himself hanging from the ground, his feet seemingly stuck to what had been the path below him, while the starry sky now yawned beneath. Despite the disorienting visual, he remained calm, understanding the illusion's nature. Closing his eyes to block out the confusing visual input, Arthur walked forward until he felt the mist dissipate. When he opened his eyes again, the world had righted itself, and he continued on his way. The path split again. Arthur chose the leftward fork, which seemed to curve toward the center of the maze. He'd gone only a few steps when the air in front of him shimmered and a massive figure materialized. A towering purple-skinned titan with a golden gauntlet, gleaming with 6 colored stones. For a split second, Arthur froze, wondering what Thanos was doing here. Then understanding dawned. A boggart, Arthur realized aloud. Knowing what it truly was, Arthur felt no fear. Without magic to cast ridiculous, he prepared to simply charge through the creature when it started to shift forms again. It transformed into a towering form of dark energy. Arthur recognized its attempt to become Dormammu, but the cosmic entity seemed too complex for the boggart to replicate properly. It tried changing once more, morphing into something immense. From the initial transformation, Arthur could tell it was attempting to become a celestial. But again, the concept proved too vast for the simple magical creature. Without warning, it simply burst into wisps of dark smoke that dissipated into the hedge walls. Arthur stood motionless, staring at the space where the creature had been. Bit off more than it could chew, he muttered, shaking his head before continuing forward. 2 turns later, he came face to face with a hideous creature, a blast-ended scrut, at least 10 feet long. Its armored shell gleamed in the dim light, scorpion-like stinger poised above its back. Arthur gripped both acromantula legs tightly. This wouldn't be easy. The scrut charged, its stinger stabbing forward with lethal intent. Arthur sidestepped, striking at the creature's eyes, but the weapon nearly deflected off its armored head. Thick armor, Arthur observed, quickly reassessing his approach. The scrut's rear end suddenly exploded, propelling it forward with alarming speed. This time, Arthur wasn't quite fast enough. The creature's armored bulk slammed into him, sending him flying into the hedge. Sharp thorns tore at his clothes as he extricated himself. The scrut was already turning for another charge. Arthur examined the path quickly. Too narrow to properly maneuver. But perhaps. As the scrut built up speed for another rush, Arthur ran straight toward it, then at the last moment, leapt upward. He propelled himself over the charging creature, coming down on its blind side. Before it could turn, Arthur wedged one of the acromantula legs beneath an edge of its shell and pushed with all his might. The makeshift lever worked, the screw tipped onto its side, legs waving uselessly in the air. Arthur didn't wait to see if it could right itself. He sprinted past, continuing deeper into the maze. Suddenly, a horrified scream cut through the night air. Female, definitely Fleur. Perhaps Crumb was already under the Imperious curse. Arthur hesitated only briefly before heading toward the sound. From his knowledge of the original timeline, Harry would likely find the path to the cup from Fleur's position. The path twisted confusingly, but he maintained his orientation. Rounding a corner, Arthur came upon a disturbing scene. Victor Crumb stood over Fleur's writhing form, his wand pointed at her, his face blank and expressionless. The unmistakable red light of the Cruciatus curse connected them. Arthur didn't hesitate. Rushing and closing the distance in seconds, he delivered a precise strike to the back of Crumb's neck. The Bulgarian champion crumpled instantly, his wand falling from limp fingers. Fleur gasped for breath, her body still trembling from the after-effects of the torture curse. Crumb! Arthur checked the Bulgarian's pulse, hoping he hadn't struck too hard. Strong and steady, he'd only been knocked unconscious. Examining Crumb more closely, Arthur noted the glazed look in his half-open eyes. Imperious curse, he muttered, for Fleur's benefit. This was clearly Crouch Jr.'s work. He attacked me, Fleur whispered, struggling to sit up. Out of nowhere. It wasn't his fault, Arthur said. He was being controlled. Fleur looked confused but too traumatized to question further. She wouldn't be continuing the task, that much was clear. However, she was also in no condition to call for help herself. Arthur faced a dilemma. He couldn't send up red sparks without magic, but he couldn't leave them here either, especially with dangerous creatures roaming the maze. The sound of running footsteps approached. Moments later, Harry Potter rounded the corner, wand at the ready. Arthur? What happened? His eyes widened at the sight of the two fallen champions. Crumb was using the Cruciatus on Fleur, Arthur explained quickly. I knocked him out. He was under the Imperious curse. Someone's interfering with the tournament. Harry paled. That's an unforgivable. Yes, and I can't send up sparks without magic. Could you signal for help? Harry nodded, raising his wand. Periculum. Red sparks shot upward, hovering above their position. The professors should be here soon, Harry said, lowering his wand. Do we wait or? A strange rumbling sound interrupted him. The hedges around them began to shift and move, opening a clear path that hadn't existed moments before. Through the new opening, they could see it, the Triwizard Cup, gleaming on a stone pedestal perhaps 100 yards away. The cup! Harry gasped. Let's go, Arthur said immediately. Someone's manipulating this tournament, and they're not playing games anymore. Let's get to the cup and end this. Harry hesitated. What about you? Not letting you win that easy. I'll be right behind you. Go. Arthur ran at the same pace as Harry, keeping neck and neck. While running, Arthur said in a low voice, Harry. With everything going on, anything may be possible. Someone wanted you in this tournament and, by the looks of it, wants you to win. If anything strange happens, remember Dumbledore set the cup as a portkey to return to the podium. Harry shot him a confused look but kept running. The cup gleamed brighter as they approached, its blue-white light almost hypnotic. Suddenly, Arthur's instincts screamed a warning. He dove to the side just as a jet of sickly green light streaked past, precisely where he'd been running. The killing curse! Harry skidded to a stop, eyes wide with shock. Keep going! Arthur shouted. Get to the cup and call for the professors. Someone's trying to murder the champions. After a moment's hesitation, Harry nodded and resumed running toward the cup. Show yourself, Moody! Arthur called, scanning the hedges. Chapter 59, Confrontation. I'm impressed, Hayes. The voice slithered from behind a shifting hedge wall, dripping with malice. Arthur tightened his grip on the makeshift spear, muscles coiled and ready. Most people don't dodge the killing curse. Fake Moody emerged into plain sight, his magical eye whirring frantically in its socket. Your reflexes are extraordinary. Harry froze mid-stride, his face contorting with confusion. Professor Moody? What are you doing? Isn't it obvious? Arthur kept his eyes locked on the impostor. He's been manipulating the tournament from the beginning. He shifted his stance slightly, calculating distances. Though we're not actually speaking to Alastair Moody, are we? What? Harry's voice cracked. The scarred face split into an unnatural grin that didn't belong on the real Moody's features. Smart little Mudblood, aren't you? Too smart for your own survival. A jet of sickly purple light erupted from the imposter's wand. Arthur dropped into a fluid roll, feeling the spell's heat sizzle through his hair as it passed. Harry, get to the cup. Arthur shouted, springing back to his feet. Now. Dumbledore's plan required Voldemort's early resurrection, and Arthur had no intention of disrupting it. He only hoped Harry would survive the graveyard intact. Without Cedric present as a sacrifice, the ritual might proceed differently than in the canon timeline. Hope was a flimsy shield, but it was all Arthur could do. He did not plan on following along to ensure Harry returned safe. That was Dumbledore's job. But I can't just, Harry protested. Move along, Potter. The false Moody fired several spells in Harry's direction, deliberately missing but hurting him toward the cup. This doesn't concern you. My business is with Hayes. Harry hesitated, conflict written across his face. The impostor fired another spell that scorched the earth at Harry's feet. Run along now, boy. I'll be fine. Get to the cup and bring back help. Arthur shouted, creating more space between him and the impostor. Remember what I said about the cup earlier. Harry's expression shifted from confusion to determination. With a final nod toward Arthur, he sprinted toward the gleaming trophy. Within seconds, Harry reached the pedestal. He glanced back once, his face set with grim determination. Arthur, be careful. Help will come soon. His fingers closed around the cup's handle, and in a flash of blue light, he vanished. The impostor turned his attention fully to Arthur, a cruel smile distorting his features. Finally alone, Hayes. I've been waiting for this. I bet you have. Arthur said indifferently. Tell me, how did it feel to teach mudbloods like me Dada? Teaching the very people you hate, how to fight against dark wizards like you. Laugh while you can, the impostor snarled, his magical eye never ceasing its frantic rotation. I've memorized every mudblood face at Hogwarts. Come summer, the hunt begins. Bold of you to assume you'll see tomorrow, Arthur replied with casual indifference, much less summer. The false Moody's face contorted with rage. I will live longer than you mudblood. Tonight my lord returns. Voldemort? The same Dark Lord who was defeated by a toddler still mastering potty training. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Not exactly intimidating resume material, is it? You dare. The taunt hit its mark perfectly. Crouch began casting wildly, each spell more lethal than the last. Crucio. Avada Kedavra. Crucio. Arthur's reflexes made each dodge look effortless. He slipped between curses like water flowing around stones, each near miss fueling Crouch's mounting frustration. With an inarticulate scream, the impostor slashed his wand through a complex pattern, muttering words that seemed to burn the air itself. Monstrous flames erupted from his wand tip, taking the shapes of serpents and chimeras that lunged hungrily toward Arthur. Fiend fire cursed flames that consumed everything they touched. Arthur dived behind a hedge wall, feeling the intense heat as the fiery beasts surged overhead. The plants blackened instantly where the flames licked them. Is running all you can do, Hayes? Crouch taunted, directing the flaming creatures to circle around. For someone with such a deadly reputation, you're remarkably fond of hiding. Don't waste breath on taunts, Arthur called back, his voice deliberately calm. I'm not a child whose pride will make him charge headlong into danger. The fire began devouring the maze itself, opening jagged holes in the once impenetrable walls. Arthur used these new pathways to maintain his distance while keeping track of Crouch's position. Why risk a direct confrontation when Dumbledore will be here shortly? Arthur's voice echoed from different directions. Your plans already failed. Crouch's laughter held an edge of madness. Potter calling for help? You're unexpectedly naive, Hayes. I modified the Portkey destination. Your precious hero is witnessing my lord's rebirth as we speak. Is that so? Arthur remained unruffled. But tell me, why are you so eager to return to slavery? The impostor's face darkened with sudden fury. What did you say? I've read the accounts. Arthur slipped behind a hedge as another killing curse shattered the foliage behind him. Death Eaters crawling on their bellies, kissing the hem of his robes. Getting tortured when his tea isn't the right temperature. Sounds like a delightful existence. Silence! Crouch roared. The roar was accompanied by a blast that incinerated an entire section of the maze. The hedges seemed to scream as they burned, their enchantments fighting against the destruction. Arthur sprinted down a newly created path, his movements fluid and precise. "It's just slavery with extra steps," he called, projecting his voice to seem like it came from multiple directions. "But what would I know? I'm just a mudblood who prefers freedom." "Freedom?" Crouch spat the word like a curse. "You know nothing. My lord offers true liberation from weakness, from morality's constraints. Is that what Death Eater school teaches these days?" Arthur's voice dripped with mock curiosity. "Or is it what you tell yourself during the torture sessions?" "Enough!" Crouch bellowed, stalking through the burning labyrinth. "All words, no substance typical of your kind." "At least I won't be forgotten," Arthur remarked casually from yet another position. "Unlike you." That stopped Crouch mid-step. "What?" "When Voldemort returns, and yes, maybe he will tonight, who gets rewarded?" Arthur kept moving, staying low. "You, the servant who died in his service? Or the wealthy cowards who claimed imperious and kept their mansions and influence?" The Death Eater's breathing grew ragged. "They'll be punished." "With what?" "A strongly worded lecture." Arthur allowed himself a mocking laugh. "Your master needs their gold, their ministry connections. He'll make them squirm a bit for show, then welcome them right back." "Lies!" Crouch screamed, his control over the fiend fire faltering. The flames briefly lost coherence, the fiery beasts wavering as if confused. Meanwhile, Arthur dropped his voice to a theatrical whisper, "You'll be dead. Dumbledore will capture you. The Ministry will silence you. And your precious lord won't spare you a second thought." "I said enough." Something snapped in Crouch. With an inhuman howl, he charged blindly toward Arthur's voice, abandoning all strategy. His wand cut wild patterns in the air, sending lethal curses in every direction. "No one will remember your name in a month," Arthur delivered the final taunt. Crouch unleashed everything he had, a storm of deadly magic converging on the spot where Arthur's voice had come from. This was precisely what Arthur had been waiting for. He hurled the acromantula leg like a javelin directly into the spell barrage. The improvised weapon splintered spectacularly, wooden fragments flying in all directions like shrapnel. The hedge protected Arthur from the deadly shower. Crouch wasn't nearly so fortunate. Razor-sharp splinters tore into his face and chest. He staggered backward, momentarily blinded by his own blood. Arthur struck with cobra-like speed. His first blow connected with Crouch's wand hand, a precise strike that shattered wrist bones with a sickening crack. The Death Eater's wand clattered uselessly to the ground. His second attack, a perfectly calculated kick, smashed through the wooden prosthetic leg. The limb exploded into fragments under Arthur's strength. Crouch collapsed in an ungainly heap, howling in pain and fury. Arthur loomed over him. "You!" Crouch wheezed, blood bubbling from his split lip. His magical eye had partially dislodged from its socket, spinning frantically. "It doesn't matter. He rises, even now." "I know." Arthur's voice held perfect composure. "But do I look concerned?" Confusion flickered across Crouch's battered face. "What? If I can defeat you without magic, what chance does your lord have when my powers return?" Arthur leaned closer, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Let me tell you a secret. My magic isn't gone. It's just too strong for my body to channel." "What do you suppose that means, especially after seeing what my physical abilities alone can accomplish?" Crouch stared up in stunned silence, blood draining from his face. Arthur delivered a precise series of blows, painful but non-lethal. Enough to subdue but not enough to kill. Crouch had a part to play in the coming hours, testimony that would prove crucial even if it would be ignored. The maze was burning around them now, the fiend fire consuming the hedge walls without Crouch's control to direct it. The magical flames roared higher, forming monstrous shapes that lunged and snapped at the night sky. Arthur hoisted the semi-conscious Death Eater over his shoulder and made for the center of the maze. The hedges seemed to recognize his intent, paths opening before him as if eager to expel the danger in their midst. The stone pedestal stood empty where the cup had been, gleaming faintly in the flickering light of the approaching flames. He placed one hand on the cold stone and the other firmly on Crouch's collar. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the familiar hook behind his navel signaled the activation of the portkayat, and the world dissolved into a whirlwind of color and sound. Behind them, the maze continued to burn. Chapter 60, Revelations. Arthur materialized outside the burning maze, the unconscious impostor slung over his shoulder like a macabre trophy. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs at the sight of one champion carrying the supposedly trusted defense professor. Professor McGonagall reached them first, her face tight with concern. "Mr. Hayes." What her eyes fell on Moody's unconscious form, and her voice sharpened. "Explain immediately." Before anything else, Arthur interrupted, carefully lowering his burden to the ground. "Are Delacour and Crumb safe?" "With the maze burning, their lives might be in danger." "They've been recovered safely," McGonagall assured him, eyes never leaving the prone figure. "Miss Delacour mentioned something disturbing about Mr. Crumb being impertinent and using an unforgivable on her." "What happened in there?" "This man happened." Arthur gestured to the unconscious form. "This isn't Moody but an impostor, a Death Eater using Polyjuice potion. He put Crumb under the Imperious curse, forced him to torture Fleur, then tried to kill me." Snape glided forward, his dark eyes narrowing. "Why target the champions?" "He wanted to eliminate the competition so Harry would reach the cup first." Arthur glanced around the growing crowd. "Speaking of which, where is Harry?" "He grabbed the cup and vanished." McGonagall's face went ashen. "The cup was only supposed to bring the victor to the judge's platform. If he's not here, the impostor must have tampered with the portrait," Arthur said, watching her reaction carefully. "Albus." McGonagall's voice cut through the chaos. "We must find Potter immediately." Dumbledore knelt beside the unconscious impostor, examining him with penetrating intensity. His normally gentle demeanor had vanished, replaced by something ancient and terrible. The acting was worthy of an Oscar. If Arthur did not already know Dumbledore was expecting this to happen, he would have been fooled too. "Severus, fetch your strongest truth serum," he commanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Minerva, secure this man in my office at once." "The maze is still burning, Headmaster," McGonagall reminded him. Dumbledore glanced at the inferno that had once been the Triwizard Maze. Fiery serpents and chimeras writhed among the burning hedges, consuming everything in their path. Arthur shrugged. "Fiend fire. Cast by our impostor here." "Madam Bones," Dumbledore called to the stern-looking witch nearby. "If you would coordinate containment efforts." Bones nodded sharply, dispatching 6 Aurors toward the blaze. The crowd swarmed closer, hungry for information. Parents clutched their children protectively while reporters shoved through the masses, quick quills hovering at the ready. Moody attacked the champions. "Where's Harry Potter? What happened inside the maze?" Ministry officials formed a protective circle around Dumbledore and the unconscious impostor. Arthur found himself pushed to the periphery, which suited him perfectly. Snape returned at a run, something almost like concern flickering across his usually impassive features. He clutched a tiny crystal vial filled with clear liquid. "Verita serum," Snape announced, handing it to Dumbledore. "The strongest batch I possess." "Revive him," Dumbledore ordered, stepping back slightly. Snape pointed his wand. "Renervate." The impostor's natural eye fluttered open. The magical eye had been confiscated by McGonagall, who held it with obvious distaste. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the man's face began to bubble and shift. The Polyjuice potion was wearing off. The transformation was grotesque. Skin rippled like boiling liquid, features melting and reforming. The battle-scarred visage of Alastor Moody dissolved, replaced by a much younger face, pale, freckled, with straw-colored hair. "Barty Crouch Jr., Dumbledore stated. His quiet voice carried more menace than a shout. "Reportedly dead in Azkaban over a decade ago." Crouch's tongue darted out, lizard-like. His eyes found Arthur, hatred blazing in their depths. Snape administered 3 drops of the truth serum. Crouch's expression immediately went slack, his eyes glazing over. "For the record," Dumbledore said clearly, "state your name." "Barty Crouch Jr.," came the flat, emotionless response. "You were sentenced to life imprisonment in Azkaban for torturing Frank and Alice Longbottom. How are you here now?" "My mother was dying," Crouch replied tonelessly. "Her last wish was to save me. She convinced my father to help her. They visited me in Azkaban. She took Polyjuice potion with my hair. I took Polyjuice potion with her hair." His voice remained mechanical, devoid of emotion. "The Dementors are blind. They sensed one healthy person, one dying person entering. They sensed one healthy person, one dying person leaving. My father smuggled me out, disguised as my mother." Arthur watched Dumbledore's face, noting the lack of urgency. With every passing minute, Harry remained in mortal danger, yet the headmaster seemed determined to extract Crouch's entire story rather than focusing immediately on Harry's location. Perhaps Dumbledore's confidence in the prophecy was absolute that neither Harry nor Voldemort could die before their final confrontation. "How did you remain hidden all these years?" Dumbledore continued. "My father kept me imprisoned in our house, hidden under an invisibility cloak, controlled by the Imperious Curse. My nurse, Winky, cared for me." Crouch's vacant eyes stared at nothing. "I began to fight the curse. At the Quidditch World Cup, in the top box, I stole a wand. I cast the dark mark." Fudge made a strangled noise but didn't interrupt. "My father tracked me down, took me home, and kept me more controlled," Crouch continued. "But then my master came for me. He had learned I was still alive. Peter Pettigrew was with him. They overpowered my father. My master placed my father under the Imperious Curse instead. I was liberated. I was rewarded." Madame Bones stepped forward sharply. "Pettigrew? Peter Pettigrew is alive?" "Yes." Crouch's face remained expressionless. "That's impossible." Fudge sputtered. "Black killed Pettigrew years ago." Dumbledore silenced him with a look. "For what purpose were you freed, Barty?" A hint of the real Barty broke through the serum's influence, a smile twisting his features. "For my master's rebirth. He needs Potter's blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. By now, it is done." "And where exactly is?" A sudden cry of pain from Crouch interrupted Dumbledore's question. The bound man's left sleeve had fallen back, revealing the dark mark black as pitch, writhing as if alive. "He has risen." Crouch cackled, momentarily breaking through the Veritaserum's control. His eyes shone with fanatical devotion. "The Dark Lord returns. Potter is dead, and my master lives." A ripple of horrified murmurs spread through the gathered crowd. "Impossible." Cornelius Fudge pushed his way forward, his face flushed and bowler hat askew. "This is a deception, a conspiracy. You know who cannot possibly have returned. And Pettigrew is dead, has been for years." "Cornelius," Dumbledore began, "now is not the time for. I'll not have this panic-mongering." Fudge shot back. "This man is clearly delusional, perhaps suffering long-term effects of the Imperious Curse. He should be remanded immediately to Ministry custody." Dumbledore turned back to Crouch. "Where has Harry Potter been taken?" Before Crouch could answer, Fudge inserted himself between them. "That's quite enough, Dumbledore. This questioning is over. As Minister for Magic, I'm taking control of this situation." "Minister, we must know where." "You have overstepped your authority," Fudge snapped. "Aurors. Take the prisoner into custody immediately." Two Aurors stepped forward, looking uncomfortable but unwilling to disobey a direct order from the minister. Dumbledore's gaze hardened. "Minerva, Severus, secure the prisoner in my office while I resolve this matter with the minister." As McGonagall and Snape moved to take Crouch, a tense standoff developed with the Aurors. Taking advantage of the distraction, Arthur edged closer to hear Dumbledore's quiet words to his staff. "Discover where Harry has been taken. By any means necessary." McGonagall nodded grimly, and she and Snape quickly led Crouch away while Dumbledore engaged Fudge in heated discussion. Arthur watched them go, assuming the role of a spectator. He had no role to play in the coming events. The crowd remained in confused disarray. Parents demanded explanations while students whispered theories to each other. Ministry officials scrambled to control the situation while reporters scribbled furiously on notepads. "I've never seen the headmaster so angry," a Hufflepuff whispered nearby. Her friend nodded solemnly. "Not even when the Weasley twins charmed all the suits of armor to sing bawdy tavern songs during the ministry inspection." 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Arthur kept his eyes fixed on the castle entrance, waiting for McGonagall and Snape to return with news of Harry's whereabouts. Finally, they reappeared, but their expressions sent a chill through the gathering. McGonagall looked shaken, while Snape's normally impassive face was tight with barely contained fury. They rushed to Dumbledore, who was still engaged in heated debate with Fudge. McGonagall whispered urgently in the headmaster's ear. The transformation in Dumbledore was instantaneous and terrifying. His eyes lost their twinkle, replaced by cold fire that made even the most skeptical onlookers take an involuntary step back. "What do you mean, a Dementor?" His voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. McGonagall's reply carried clearly across the suddenly silent crowd. "It was waiting outside your office, Albus. It performed the kiss before we could intervene." Crouch's soul is gone. Dumbledore rounded on Fudge. Who authorized a Dementor on school grounds? The minister's cheeks drained of color. Standard procedure for high-security prisoners. You fool! Dumbledore thundered, suddenly seeming to tower over Fudge despite their similar heights. You've destroyed our only lead to Harry Potter's location. Now see here, Fudge attempted to rally. No, you see here, Cornelius. Dumbledore's voice dropped dangerously. A student has been abducted. Harry Potter's life is in danger. If he does not return safely, I assure you, your tenure as minister will be measured in hours, not years. Fudge swallowed hard, then turned to the stern-looking witch nearby. Amelia, coordinate with Dumbledore. Find the Potter boy. Madame Bones nodded briskly. Headmaster, how should we proceed? Dumbledore exchanged a meaningful glance with Snape. Arthur knew Snape's dark mark would be burning, calling him to his master's side. Would Dumbledore risk his spy to save Harry? The decision became moot as screams erupted from the edge of the field. Blue light flashed again, the same distinctive glow of a Portkaya activation. A figure had appeared, sprawled on the ground, one hand still clutching the Triwizard Cup. Harry Potter lay motionless for a heartbeat, then stirred. His robes were torn and bloodied, his face streaked with dirt and tears. He's back! Harry's anguished cry pierced the night air. Voldemort's back! The crowd recoiled as if physically struck by the name. Parents grabbed their children. Students clutched each other. Ministry officials stood frozen in shock. Arthur watched the color drain from Fudge's face as the minister's carefully constructed reality collapsed around him. Denial and fear warred in his features. He's lying, Fudge whispered, though no one seemed to hear him. He must be confused. As professors surrounded Harry, guiding him toward the hospital wing, Arthur slipped away quietly. His role in this particular drama had concluded. His time at Hogwarts was coming to an end. A few final preparations remained before he could say goodbye, perhaps forever. He would only return if the wizarding conflict threatened to spill over into the Muggle world, potentially triggering a catastrophic collision between the two societies. But that would require his magic to be fully restored. For now, he would wait and watch from a distance, hoping that events would unfold according to the canon. Behind him, the last of the fiend fire was finally contained, leaving the maze a scorched ruin, a fitting symbol for the darkness that now encroached upon the wizarding world.
Thanks for listening.